Chapter 642. Silence. It was the atmosphere at this moment. It was also the attitude that everyone should have at this moment. Under the gaze of many logistical personnel of the Yakin Douai defense line, a group of people with a completely different temperament from the other Zaft MS troops stood among Neku. They silently looked at the young man with short blue hair and a red mask on his face. Although the young man's face was covered by a mask, everyone present already knew his identity. Aslan Saleh. He was the son of Patrick Saleh, the chairman of Plant's National Defense and the Speaker of the Supreme Council. He was also a young man with outstanding talent. Under the righteous cause of fighting for Plant, he was entrusted with an important task by the National Defense Committee to form an MS team named Defenders. Although no one had seen the other members of this newly formed MS team before. However, judging from the airframe that Zaft had specially configured for this MS team, this Defender was enough to become Zaft's most elite unit the moment it was formed. Even though the composition of the people standing in front of Aslan was a bit puzzling. In this team, there was a young pilot with a handsome face and a tall and straight posture. There was also a burly and steady strong man, and there was also a pair of petite twin girls who looked almost exactly the same. From tall to short, from front to back, from left to right, even though these people stood straight and had a serious expression, it was difficult to give off the feeling that this was an elite team. Everyone. Suddenly, Aslan, who was standing in front, yelled, causing the defenders to be shocked and focus their attention on Aslan. A few days ago, the news of Earth United regaining nuclear weapons and capturing Boyaz in one fell swoop, I believe you all already know. Then, there is only one mission for you now, which is to guard the gate of Plant. You must not let Earth United's nuclear bomb hit Plant. Yes, Captain. Under the red mask was a cold gaze. The team member in front of him loudly agreed, but it didn't seem to arouse the ripples in the eyes, as if it was a matter of course. Everyone dispersed, leaving Aslan alone. He stood in front of a gray Mecha and pondered silently. This was the same series of Mecha of the Free Gouda, who had already earned the title of Demon of Light in Zaft. X-09A Justice Gouda. The time it took to go offline was not much different from when Gouda was free. However, it remained in Zaft, while the Free Gouda was taken away by Ray Minkai and the others. Now, this brand-new airframe that was lucky enough to be left in Zaft had also become Aslan Sarah's new airframe. Aslan. Justice Gouda's OS had been debugged. We can attack at any time. Among the departing figures of the crowd, another beautiful figure appeared. She was Alice Pompey. Ever since Aslan had established the defenders in Yakin Douai, everyone here knew that this young lady had appeared as Aslan's exclusive trainee. They would often see this red-clothed girl circling around Justice Gouda all day long. I understand. It was just that the falling flowers were unrequited by the heartless brook. In the eyes of outsiders, Alice's passionate actions only received Aslan's cold response. No matter how passionately Alice talked to Aslan, she was always greeted with a cold sentence and a back view that turned and left without hesitation. Every time they saw this scene, the onlookers couldn't help but sigh for Alice's encounter, and at the same time be surprised by Aslan's indifference. After all, in Plant and Zaft, most people only knew that Aslan and Lux had already been engaged, but they didn't know that Aslan and Lux had already broken off their relationship. As for what these onlookers were thinking, Alice didn't care. She knew that after Aslan was put on that mask, there wouldn't be much emotional fluctuation. That was a mask that suppressed human emotions to the minimum, allowing the wearer's rationality to be at its peak at all times. At the same time, it would also be controlled by a special signal sent out at a special frequency. Therefore, no matter how cold Aslan was now, it also meant that the mask was working as Alice and Mia thought. Aslan. Don't blame me. Alice looked at Aslan's back view and sighed faintly. She turned back to look at Gouda, and then at the grayish-black body next to Gouda. However, the body's shoulders were even sharper, as if it was carrying a huge inverted triangle on its back. It was standing there quietly, waiting for its owner to enter the cockpit. Reborn Gouda. It was also a body of the same series as Freedom Gouda, which Zaft called the Demon of Light. However, just like Holy Accord Gouda, it wasn't active in the main story, but was active in the Heresy chapters. Due to some reason, it fell into the hands of the Earth Alliance, and became entangled with Law and the Trash Chamber of Commerce. Of course, under Alice's control, just like Holy Accord Gouda, Reborn Gouda was sent to Yakin Due in advance, and was ordered not to be touched by anyone other than herself, thus putting an end to what happened next. It wasn't for anything. It was to be able to fight together with Aslan in the next battle. The war was about to begin. After completing the resupply, the Earth Alliance Moon Fleet where the Angel was located set sail again. With the high morale of defeating Boyaz in one fell swoop, they rushed straight to the door of Plant. Looking at the Earth Alliance Moon Fleet coming from afar, Zaft's battleship, which was first set up on Plant's defense line, immediately released all of its MS and took the lead in the first battle. In the first wave of MS troops intercepting the Earth Alliance Moon Fleet, Zack and Diego were among them. The fully armed dual Gouda and Storm Gouda were especially eye-catching among the group of Gold N. As soon as they appeared in the largest detection range of the Earth Alliance Moon Fleet, they would be attacked more than Gold N on the spot, and more terrifying. Dual Gouda's auxiliary propulsion engine suddenly turned to the right. With the powerful thrust, Dual Gouda was able to dodge the incoming missile's attack path in time, and it also gave Dual Gouda a good opportunity to counterattack. Boom! Boom! The 220mm 5-barreled missiles on his left shoulder fired a volley, forcing the two charging daggers to retreat. Diego. Support at any time. We absolutely cannot let this fleet break through the defense line. Although Zack's side was dealing with it easily, the pressure on other aspects was increasing. Even though Zaft had begun to prepare for the situation where the Earth Alliance Moon Fleet would take advantage of the victory to attack after Boyaz was captured by nuclear weapons, judging from the 4 Agamemnon-class motherships behind the Angel, which were still unmoved no matter how intense the frontline battle was, this Earth Alliance fleet must have a backup plan. Received. Zack? Isn't that a warship with nuclear weapons? Diego also noticed the 4 Agamemnon-class motherships, but they were too far away. With Storm Gouda's effective range, he couldn't touch the 4 Agamemnon-class motherships at all. I'm afraid so. Inform the rear to get ready. Zack gritted his teeth and glanced at the Angel Lord in the middle of the fleet. If they wanted to attack the 4 Agamemnon-class motherships, they would have to pass through the Angel Lord's defense net first. Moreover, while Zack was thinking about how to attack, 3 dots of light rushed out of the Angel Lord's takeoff runway one after another, heading straight for Dual Gouda and Storm Gouda. Zack, they're attacking. We're being watched. It's the 3 airframes that Captain Kreutzer mentioned. They've finally appeared. Diego, be careful. Zack didn't know how Kreutzer obtained the information about Calamity, Forbidden, and the 3 Gouda. He only knew that if these 3 airframes rushed into the defensive line, they would inevitably cause a series of uncontrollable accidents. As a result, the battle between Storm Gouda, Dual Gouda, and Calamity, Forbidden, and the 3 Gouda was the first shot fired by Storm Gouda's long-range beam cannon. Under the beam of light, the 3 Gouda scattered on the spot, enveloping Dual Gouda and Storm Gouda in their attack range in an expanding triangular formation. This was the tacit understanding that the 3 rookies had trained day and night. However, such a tacit understanding was extremely abnormal in the eyes of Olga and Xia and I. Hey, Olga. Is Krat still alive like that? Xiani's eyes were as flexible as before. No, it should be said that he was 3 times more flexible than before when he snatched Gouda. He couldn't help but send an encrypted communication to Calamity Gauda, idiot. How can he be considered alive like that? Olga clenched her teeth tightly and forced herself not to think about the scene when she saw Krat just now. Half of his face was replaced with an iron plate, and his right eye was replaced with an electronic eye that emitted a cold light. Even his voice had become no different from a cold electronic voice. This was the appearance of Krat, who had returned with great difficulty, wearing a pilot's uniform. If the pilot's uniform was changed, Olga believed that the scene hidden behind the pilot's uniform would be even more terrifying than what they saw. From the looks of it, Krat could no longer be called a human. Damn it! Olga's reaction made Xia and I upset. No matter how Xia and I thought about it, he couldn't think of a reason. In the end, Xia and I could only turn the many problems that troubled him into anger and fiercely attack Dual Gauda. The crazy attack immediately increased the pressure on Izak, but he had no choice but to raise his spirits to deal with it. On the other side, Storm Gauda, who wanted to support Gauda in the duel, was also stopped by robbing Gauda. At the same time, Calamity Gauda, which was also designed to deal with long-range firepower, followed behind robbing Gauda, completely sealing off the last possibility of Storm Gauda supporting Dual Gauda. Damn it, Diego! Kill them first. Understood. The battle became more and more intense, making it impossible for Izak and Diego to divert their attention to the movements of the 4 Agamemnon classes. This was exactly what Lars wanted. The airframe that was seized by Zaf's group of thieves was finally entangled. Forget it. It's time. The Peace Pioneer Army entered the attack sequence. In the pitch-black space, in the universe with many funnel-shaped colonial satellites floating, it was burning with a ghastly blaze. Are we late? Margaret frowned as she looked at the battle flames that were getting closer and closer to plant. No. It's not too late. Free Gauda's speed can reach plant in time. Other MS, please prepare to chase after him immediately. When Free Gauda arrives on the battlefield and delays the enemy's movements, cooperate with the speed of our battleships entering the battlefield and attack as soon as possible. As Lux's voice sounded, she made a series of arrangements for the following actions. As the only vanguard force, Free Gauda was already standing on the ejection device, waiting for the moment the permission to attack was given. Knight, I'm very sorry. Among our MS, there is no one who can catch up to Free Gauda's airframe. Therefore, for a period of time, you will need to face the joint attacks from Zaft and Earth alone. When Butterfield's face appeared on the screen, his expression was also very solemn. Yes. Compared to the original scene where Freedom and Justice joined forces to attack the nuclear weapons, the current situation where Free Gauda was fighting alone was indeed much more serious. No. This isn't a big deal. The situation was grim, but it was not a problem for Ray Minkai. Is that so? Then, the takeoff channel ahead is cleared, and we can attack at any time. After pausing for a moment, Butterfield continued. Right. After we go out, don't be anxious. SS Eternity still has to launch the meteor system. At least, one more force is one more guarantee. Ray Minkai nodded. Understood. The moment Butterfield turned his head to look behind, Lux's face also appeared in front of Ray Minkai's eyes. Ray Minkai and Lux looked at each other across the air. Everything was understood without words. Then, Lux said in a clear voice, X-10A, Free Gauda. The channel is cleared, and we can attack at any time. Understood. Free Gauda. Ray Minkai. Attack. The catapult was activated, and the already prepared Free Gauda was sent out of SS Eternity. Then, as Gauda's light wings unfurled, the right side of SS Eternity began to move. The moment the lock mechanism was activated, the propulsion engine was activated, and the weapons were deployed. They converged with Free Gauda in front of SS Eternity, completing the crucial step of merging the two into one. Shouting for peace while raising your weapon. This might be a sinful choice. The moment the Meteor System's self-integration program passed, Lei Minkai heard Lux's voice. No, Lux. Ray Minkai raised his gaze and looked at the screen before him, as well as Lux's eyes. Lux. My ancestors once said that peace cannot be bought with false words, nor can it be bought with compromise. Therefore, this is not a sinful choice. This is just a struggle for peace, a struggle to protect it. Lux was taken aback, but then she smiled in relief. Is that so? This is a struggle for peace, a struggle to protect it. Lux slowly looked at the screen before her and extended her right hand towards Ray Minkai. Then, please use this power to sever this endless chain of hatred. Kai. I beg of you. As you wish. My Royal Highness. Winged Radiance Transmitter, activate at full power. Free Gouda. Attack. Outside the battlefield, a pure radiance streaked across the void like a meteor, charging into the center of the battlefield. Chapter 643. The Peacemaker. The moment the large fire called the Peacemaker appeared from behind the Lord Angel and charged along the edge of the battlefield, Isaac discovered the MA unit that was about to bring a nightmare to Plant. That is, the moment he forced back Gouda, Isaac suddenly remembered what happened when Boyaz fell. Ma? A large-scale MA? Isaac was shocked and immediately thought of a bad news. Nuclear bomb. It's a nuclear bomb. The constantly zooming lens in front of him finally stopped on the missile on the weapon mount below the belly of the Mobius. A warning pattern representing radiation was in sight. Diego, don't continue to fight with these enemies. Nuclear bomb. Earth United fired a nuclear bomb at Plant. As a member of Plant, Isaac naturally would not forget what a nightmare the nuclear bomb had brought to Plant. Unius 7 and Boyaz, who had just been destroyed by a nuclear bomb. Next, the Earth United will fire nuclear weapons at Plant again. How could Isaac allow such a thing to happen? As a result, Gouda brazenly poured all the weapons on his body that could burst out with powerful firepower in an instant towards Forbidden Gouda 115mm electromagnetic cannon on the right shoulder, half of the remaining 220mm 5 missiles on the left shoulder. These pieces of equipment that could be thrown away completed their mission in an instant. The instantaneous explosion of live ammunition caused the Forbidden Gundam and Xia and I to subconsciously avoid the brunt of the attack. They were afraid that the dual Gundam would choose to take the hit head-on because its PS armor was strong enough to withstand live ammunition. Xia and I was afraid that the dual Gundam would swing its beam sword and launch a sudden attack, while the Forbidden Gundam was relying on its powerful PS armor to withstand live ammunition. Xia Ni's split-second decision allowed the Gundams to break free from the entanglement with the prohibitive Gundams and head towards the cluster of nuclear weapons that were being fired at Plant while the Peace Pioneers were chanting the slogan, "For the blue and clean sky." Quick! Quick! Don't let the nuclear bomb hit Plant's colonial satellite. Abandoning all the external weapons that could be abandoned, leaving only the Vulcan cannon in his head and the beam rifle in his hand in the duel, Gouda broke out beyond the limit, but to no avail. Even as he frantically accelerated towards the nuclear weapons cluster, Isaac gritted his teeth and kept pulling the trigger, letting dual Gouda shoot out beams of light, trying to hit the nuclear bomb that was rushing at Plant at full speed as much as possible. As Isaac used all his strength to call for backup, Kim and Sigger, who heard Isaac's voice, immediately turned their guns, either trying to shoot down the nuclear warhead like the dual Gundam, or accelerating to close the distance between them and the nuclear warhead. However, these actions attracted the attention of the Forbidden Gundam that had just been shaken off by the dueling Gundam. "Don't hit those. It's beautiful." Shunny didn't care what dual Gouda was doing or whether he wanted to catch up. He only knew that if he let those Gold N and Higu follow dual Gouda, then Isaac and the others might successfully intercept the nuclear bomb. Therefore, the Gold Graces who wanted to follow behind the dueling Gundams and work together to shoot down the nuclear bombs became targets for the Gundams to be banned. Every time Shunny laughed, a few zines would be shot down. Damn it, Diego! Why aren't you here yet? Gouda became more and more powerless in the duel, with only the beam rifle that could barely keep up with the speed of the nuclear bomb. Isaac really hoped that Storm Gouda, who had stronger and more long-range firepower, could come to intercept the nuclear weapons cluster. However, just as Isaac thought, Calamity Gouda and Gouda, who were besieging Storm Gouda, also thought the same. The highly mobile Snatch Gouda once again recreated the situation when they besieged Nigger and Moo. However, the target of Snatch Gouda was only Storm Gouda, and the risk was far less than facing the dark attack. Croft. Olga glanced at Storm Gouda, who was systematically restraining Gouda and creating an opportunity for Calamity Gouda, and couldn't help but sigh. But he didn't think too much about it. Let's end this. On Calamity Gouda's backpack, 2 high-energy long-range beams of light and the multiple-phase energy cannons on his chest alternated between firing, cooperating with the rhythm of snatching Gouda, forcing Storm Gouda into a dead-end step by step. Diego's expression became uglier and uglier, and his teeth became more and more painful, but he had no better way. Snatching Gouda's high mobility made Storm Gouda suffer a lot. Not to mention, there was still Calamity Gouda, whose firepower was no less than Storm Gouda's, pressing on step by step. In such a dangerous situation, let alone supporting Isaac and helping him strike down the nuclear bomb. Even if he wanted to break out of the encirclement, it would be difficult to do so. What should we do? Diego stared at the screen, trying to find a way to get him out, but he didn't have the slightest chance. Could it be that this is the end? On the radar screen on the side, the dot of light representing the nuclear weapon cluster was about to rush into Plant's final warning circle. Once these nuclear bombs rushed into the final warning circle, even if they could be intercepted in time, the aftermath of the explosion would probably affect Plant's seemingly sturdy but incomparably fragile colonial satellite. Just as Diego was at his wits' end, he could only watch Isaac's futile effort as he joined forces with Snatching Gouda and Calamity Gouda. He watched as the nuclear weapon cluster was about to rush into Plant's final warning circle. Light appeared. Behind the colonial satellite cluster where tens of millions of PLNT citizens lived, a seemingly inconspicuous but heart-wrenching stream of light suddenly appeared in front of Diego. For some reason, the moment he saw this stream of light, Diego's anxious heart suddenly calmed down slightly. Immediately after, beams of light erupted from the front of the stream of light like a rainstorm, enveloping Storm Gouda's location, but they did not harm Storm Gouda at all. It was a beam attack, but it was not an attack aimed at Storm Gouda. Instead, it was aimed at the attacks of Snatching Gouda and Calamity Gouda, who were jointly attacking Storm Gouda. In the midst of the beam attack that did not show any signs of stopping, even Snatching Gouda, who had high mobility, had no choice but to dodge the attack. However, this was at the cost of the right wing being directly evaporated by a gray, blue, and red beam of light on the spot, before he was able to escape from the rainstorm-like beam of light. As for the Calamity Gundam, it relied on its weapon's long range to launch its attack from a distance away from the Storm Gundam. At the moment the Storm Gundam was attacked, it was lucky enough to escape from the beam storm by a hair's breadth. But even so, Olga was still very lucky in his heart. If he were any slower, he would definitely not be any luckier than Snatching Gouda. He could clearly feel that this terrifying storm of light was heading straight for Calamity Gouda. Let's go, Diego. Before Diego could react, he heard a familiar voice. Then, the stream of light that forced Snatching Gouda and Calamity Gouda back flashed in front of Storm Gouda and chased after the nuclear bomb. At that moment, Diego saw the giant white MA from the stream of light, and he also saw the familiar outline in the center of the MA. Free Gouda? Ray Minkai? Questions arose. Diego, however, was unwilling to give up the opportunity to snatch Gouda and Calamity Gouda at the same time. He drove Storm Gouda, who was trying his best to accelerate behind flowing light, and rushed forward. Close, close, close. Zack's eyes were red, and they were so wide that his eyeballs could pop out of their sockets on the spot. But even so, they were unable to intercept the nuclear weapon cluster that was rushing towards plant. Zack, who had tried his best, was not unsuccessful. However, with only the beam rifle and the headfire cannon that was useless at the moment, Gouda could only shoot down a few nuclear bombs. No! Someone come! Absolutely! We absolutely can't let. On the radar screen in front of him, the dot of light representing the nuclear bomb finally began to cross Plant's final warning circle. As long as a few more minutes passed, the huge number of nuclear weapons would inevitably turn several, more than 10, dozens of colonial satellites into cold tombstones floating in space. And under these space tombstones, there were hundreds of thousands and millions of graves buried. No! At this moment, Zack and the other MS pilots of Zaft shouted with grief and indignation in their hearts, but they could do nothing. After trying their best, despair surged like a tide, pulling everyone who tried their best but couldn't stop everything into the bottomless abyss. In such a moment of despair, light appeared. The stream of light that saved Storm Gouda from despair, like the dawn of endless darkness, appeared in front of Zack and the others, in front of Plant's colonial satellite, and also on the attack route of the nuclear weapon cluster. Then, with a soft sound, the moment the multi-locking system was activated, a burst of more intense and terrifying bullet screen than the one that forced Gouda and Gouda to retreat appeared. Look, it was a terrifying beam of light with gray, blue, and red colors. It was an electromagnetic cannonball endowed with powerful kinetic energy. It was a green beam of light that was so accurate that each hit could shoot down a nuclear bomb. This was like a terrifying bullet screen that a sub-fleet, no, it was even comparable to a full fleet. It became the last line of defense in front of Plant, hitting all the nuclear bombs that had just kicked Zack and the others into the abyss of despair. In an instant, countless suns rose in front of Plant. The two sides of the battle froze in place, staring blankly at the sun that tore open the endless darkness and scattered its bright light in this void space. It wasn't until an incredulous exclamation sounded in the communication channel that everyone regained their senses. All the nuclear bombs have exploded. However, the target is still alive. How is that possible? As soon as she heard this news, Bujuluru stood up on the spot, clenched her hands tightly, and stared at the back of the dazzling light. She knew that in front of that wave of terrifying nuclear bomb offensive, there was the most powerful enemy the Earth Alliance had encountered so far. How is that possible? Again. Notify Washington. Send out peace pioneers again. I want to see how many they can stop. Unlike Bujuluru, who had already realized that the battle situation might be reversed, Mutayazi, who could not accept the upheaval in front of him, issued the latest order on the spot. Under the dazzling light, Zack, who had just fallen into despair, also stared blankly at the back of the dazzling light, the MA with white armor and gorgeous shape, and the MS in the center, Freedom Gouda Lu. Meteor System. Freedom Gouda! Zack clenched his teeth so hard that they almost bled. He didn't understand why the person who had already betrayed Plant would suddenly come out to mess up the situation and save Plant's life. Hey! Zack, are you okay? I finally made it. At this time, Diego's voice was heard. Diego? Who is that? Zack bit his lip and asked subconsciously. Diego raised his eyebrows, but his attitude was much calmer than Zack's. Who else? Our military academy's cohort, number 1 Ray Minkai. Bastard! That's a traitor! A traitor who betrayed us! Yitzhak roared hoarsely, but Diego didn't care. But it's also because of this traitor that our home, Plant, survived. Zack was shocked when he heard this. At the same time, When Freedom Gauda destroyed all the incoming nuclear bombs, the three-ship alliance followed closely behind Freedom Gauda and rushed out from the shadows of Plant's colonial satellite. Earth's army, stop attacking immediately. Do you really know what you're using? If you continue to use this kind of weapon that tramples on people's wishes for peace, then we will use all our strength to defeat you. From the SS Eternity, which was the leader of the three-ship alliance, came a voice that shocked Zaft. Lakis Klein? Miss Lakis? However, among the Zaft pilots who participated in the defense of Earth's joint attack, there were many who knew that Plant's Lakis Klein had already followed Patrick Sala to Yakinduwe. Moreover, in Zaft's report, the SS Eternity had been defined as a traitor's warship. This was because Lakis's voice only caused Zaft's side to be stunned for a moment. After that, they continued to fight with Earth's moon fleet. The intense battle would not stop because of Lakis's voice. On the contrary, Mutta Yazi, who heard this voice, laughed wildly. Ha 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 ha. Hey! How naive! While hindering us, you're shouting for us to stop. How hypocritical! Attack, continue! Bucky Lulu turned around to look at Lars Mutta Yazi, then sat back in his seat. His gaze moved up, looking at Freedom Gauda on the screen. He slowly raised his right hand. Lord Angel! Maximum battle speed. Target, Archangel. Chapter 644. As soon as the Archangel appeared, the main angel immediately took action against it. However, before the Archangel could respond, it was interrupted by Ray Minkai. Under the combination of the Freedom Gauda and the Meteor system, an impenetrable firepower intercepting net intercepted all the incoming nuclear bombs. At the same time, Ray Minkai's attention was also focused on the other side of the Plant Colony satellite cluster, where Yakinduwe was located. At the position where Yakinduwe was located, Zaft's most powerful and terrifying trump card was hidden. Archangel, maintain the current formation. Don't join forces with Earth alone. Perhaps Zaft's attack is coming. Ray Minkai's words were not only sent to the Archangel, so the three-ship alliance could hear Ray Minkai's words. Kai, you mean? Just as she finished speaking, some fragmented images appeared in Lux's mind, and she stood up from her seat. Kai. At this moment, Lux's voice became unusually solemn. You mean the thing next to Yakinduwe? Ray Minkai's eyes moved, but he still nodded slowly. Lux's current performance was just as State Zero predicted by the White Cat. Perhaps she had already remembered some things. All ships maintain their current positions and do their best to intercept the incoming nuclear bombs. Don't take another step forward. Lux's expression changed slightly, and she finally gave this confusing order. Looking at the two people speaking in riddles, Margaret and Carrie were confused, but Butterfield sighed thoughtfully. Looks like the war is going to get even crazier. Not only did Lux's public broadcast spread throughout the battlefield, it was also heard clearly by Yakinduwe. In the command center hall, many people secretly glanced at the command deck. A pink figure was standing quietly beside the commander's seat, listening to Lux's broadcast without any reaction. Even though many of Zaft's soldiers were shaken by Lux's broadcast, the pink figure remained silent. Lux, what do you think? On the command deck, Patrick sneered and turned to look at the girl standing next to him. The girl's expression was very calm. No. How Father views this matter is how I view it. What's more, everything she is doing now is to prevent Plant from being hit by another nuclear bomb. Is that so? The sneer on Patrick's face deepened, but deep down, he was satisfied with Mia's performance. It doesn't matter if she's sincere in giving her all for Plant, Lakis Klein can only exist in this world alone. So, Patrick paused and suddenly stood up from his seat. Zaft's soldiers. The one speaking on the battlefield is not the real Lux Klein. Even though her actions are Lux is Yakinduwe's. However, impersonating Lux Klein and seizing the product of our Zaft's hard work. The Freedom Gundam, the SS Eternity, is a fact. So, don't be blinded by their kindness. Patrick's words immediately caused a split in Zaph's side, who was fighting fiercely with the Earth's allied army and was about to join forces with the three spaceship alliance to intercept the nuclear bomb. What? That is a fake Lux Klein? How is that possible? That is a fake Lux Klein. What are you doing? Quickly intercept the nuclear bomb. We will talk about this later. Some were surprised. Some were doubtful. Some were focused on the matter at hand. But even more people were shrouded in doubt, unable to concentrate on the battle for a long time. If not for the fact that the combination of Gouda and the meteor system attracted most of the attention, the headquarters words would have caused more casualties on Zaph's side. Luck. Don't mind Patrick's words. Ray Minkai naturally heard this too. But Lux's emotions did not fluctuate at all. No. I don't mind. From the day the name of Lacus Klein was taken away, I had the resolve to face this day. Lux's performance was very strong, causing Butterfield, who was worried that Lux would be affected by Patrick's words, to sigh slightly. So strong. Our princess. However, the situation here did not affect Patrick in the slightest. Even if Gouda had almost dominated the entire battlefield. How much time do we have before the Genesis is ready? After Patrick finished his speech, he sat back in his seat and asked again. Yes, we can fire at any time. Then, let our fleet leave the firing path. Patrick raised his hand, indicating that they should act according to the plan. But Kreutzer, who was guarding on the left, glanced at Patrick without batting an eyelid, then looked at Mia, who was standing on Patrick's right. Unexpectedly, Mia also looked over at that moment. After their gazes met in midair, Kreutzer retracted his gaze as Mia smiled. Even though it was just a casual glance, Kreutzer realized that this Lux Klein that Patrick had acknowledged was not as simple as she looked. She was just like the red-clothed elite, Alice Pompey, who always circled around Aslan. An unstable factor? Just like that knight who piloted Gouda, at this moment, all the preparations were complete. Patrick leaned forward slightly and said in a clear voice, "Let the troops fall back. Azaria. Let the Earth Union see our new power." In an instant, Yakin Due's stern warning filled the entire battlefield, but it was only limited to Zaph's side. And when the three-ship alliance saw Zaph's fleet and MS begin to retreat, they immediately thought of the riddle that Ray Minkai and Lux had just played. Zaph's new weapon? Marlene was shocked and immediately asked the SS Eternity. "Captain Marlene, Captain Zasaka, Carrie, let's fall back." Lux's face was solemn, but her gaze was fixed on Yakin Due's side. Similarly, Ray Minkai also received a warning from Wyzak. "Kai. Get out of the way. The Genesis is about to launch." But before Wyzak could finish his warning, Gouda had already flown past the dueling Gouda, avoiding the Genesis' shooting trajectory. Wyzak almost choked on his unfinished words. That bastard! Did he already know what the Genesis era was all about from the start? Wyzak opened his mouth and turned to chase after Gouda, leaving Diego very helpless. That's right. Compared to Ray Minkai, who had just found out what the Genesis was all about, he indeed already knew about the existence of the Genesis. But he did not have any compassionate thoughts because of this. "Nigger, Major Moo. All MS, hold off on attacking. MS, who have already attacked, return to your mothership and assist in the defense." The moment the three-ship alliance entered the battlefield, Dark Assault and Moo's M1 Heretics and other MS also attacked. But they did not come at the right time. Due to Gao Da's super-active, the Earth Alliance's nuclear attack suffered an even more terrifying blow. No matter how many peace pioneers the Earth Alliance invested in, with the flying wing-type Radiance Bearer at full power, Freedom Gouda, who had the speed to look down on the entire battlefield, became a nightmare for the peace pioneers. Every peace pioneer MA, every nuclear bomb that was launched, they were all dead souls under the Freedom Gundam's guns. This also caused the Black Assault, M1 Heresy, and other MS troops to be idle. Good. Nigger and Mu did not say anything and immediately turned back, returning to the airspace between the SS Eternity and the SS Archangel. As for the SS Chowwei, it was naturally protected by many M1 Heretic. The Earth Alliance was puzzled by the sudden retreat of the Zaft fleet. In particular, the terrifying body that had just pressed the Peace Pioneers' forces in front of the plant and the scene of Freedom Gao de retreating immediately made Mutta Yazzie Lars surprised at first, then happy. That monster body retreat! This is an opportunity! Quick, quick! Throw the rest of the Peace Pioneers in. Yazzie Lars, Director. I'm afraid. Shut up. This is an opportunity. How many Peace Pioneers' forces has that monster stopped? It's because of its appearance that our attack has been delayed for so long. Now is a great opportunity. Buggy Lulu bit her lips, but she could not say anything to let the fleet temporarily suspend their attack and observe the situation, because she found that the fleet where the Angel was now seemed to have fallen into madness. And this crazy Earth Alliance moon fleet did not know that the glory of death had descended on this world. Genesis aiming, use the mirror to expand. Starting voltage. Phantom outer layer colloid removed. Ripples. With a wave of ripple-like light and shadow, a huge artificial object appeared behind Yazin Duwei. Its appearance immediately attracted the attention of the Earth Alliance moon fleet, who were originally a little confused, to begin with. However, but it was already too late. As the last Zaft battleship and the last Xeon withdrew from the firing trajectory of Genesis, a smile appeared on Patrick's face. This is our victory. Earth Alliance, you lost. Then, Patrick stood up, raised his right hand and shouted loudly, "Let's go! Let the light of Genesis open up a new world for us adjusters. Genesis, fire!" With a command, the Genesis firing program was immediately released from the command center. In the blink of an eye, a dazzling yet terrifying light burst out from the interior of the Genesis. Under the refraction of the mirror several times, it was like the thunder of heavenly punishment in the legends. It went straight to the universe where the Earth United Lunar Fleet was located. In just the blink of an eye, the rolling thunder that seemed to be able to spread from the void appeared in the minds of the humans who witnessed all this. This terrifying torrent of rays that was called Genesis, but actually brought destruction to the enemy. A gamma-ray burst brutally pierced through the formation of the Earth Alliance moon fleet. At this moment, whether it was the battleships forged from steel, the MS, or the humans of flesh and blood, all of them either exploded into a cloud of blood mist in this gamma-ray burst. That terrifying scene continued to play out under the gamma-ray burst. As long as the humans witnessed all this, they could not help but subconsciously imagine the terrifying scene of human flesh and blood being instantly annihilated under this gamma-ray burst. Fire! Genesis! Lux clenched her hands tightly. The moment the gamma-ray burst and the path of death that covered the battleships, the MS, and the souls of the dead appeared, the blurry memory became clearer and clearer. In the end, we still can't avoid the same tragedy? Lux looked at the people around her. Without exception, after the battle-hardened Butterfield saw the terrifying attack of Genesis, he only had a shocked and fearful expression. That was the most realistic expression that emerged from the instincts of humans. Kai, should we retreat? Lux raised her gaze and looked at the screen. Perhaps I have a piece of good news and a piece of bad news. Ray Minkai, who witnessed the light of Genesis with his own eyes, suppressed the shock in his heart and showed a forced smile. Speak, Kai. There's no news worse than the launch of Genesis. As Lux spoke, she nodded at the two images that popped up one after another on the main screen. They were the communication images from the Archangel Mall and the Kusanagi Zizaka. The good news is that Genesis can't be launched continuously. After each launch, the mirror must be replaced. And this period of time may be our opportunity. The bad news is that if we attack like this, it means that we will have to face Yakin Due's defense forces alone. After a pause, Ray Minkai continued. As well as Aslan Saleh and Law Lu Kreutzer. Aslan? Lux frowned slightly, but in the end, she still looked at Maul and Zizaka. I think we can only temporarily retreat. The Earth Alliance's fleet has already suffered heavy losses. If we continue to stay here, I'm afraid it won't be much better than attacking Yakin Due alone. The three-ship alliance was clear about Patrick's speech just now. Without the restraint of a strong enemy like the Earth Alliance, even with the Free Gouda and Ray Minkai as their trump cards, the three-ship alliance would have to fight hard before they could successfully retreat. Yes, indeed. Then, what about the Kusanagi? Zizaka looked at Carrie and got the same answer. Baltfield nodded. Then, all warships turn around and retreat temporarily. In the Free Gouda's cockpit, the White Cat State Zero licked the crystal at the corner of its mouth and couldn't help but look back at Ray Minkai. Kai. I said it. You humans are really wasteful. Chapter 645. The Genesis shocked the world. The Earth Alliance Moon Fleet suffered heavy losses on the spot, and they had to send a request for help from the lunar base Ptolemy. At the same time, they had to retreat to a safe universe and carry out intense regrouping and maintenance operations. On the other side of the Plant Colonial Satellite Cluster, in the small gravel belt formed by the debris left behind when Plant developed deep space, the situation faced by the three-ship alliance was not much better than the situation faced by the Earth Alliance Moon Fleet. Although the MS force of the three-ship alliance did not suffer much damage, the MS force of the three-ship alliance did not suffer much damage. Simmons, the development director of Dawnlight Society, had a solemn look on her face. Dr. Serene, who had left DS-SD, had the same look on her face. When she was at DS-SD's Troy space station, Selene once mentioned to Ray Minkai that some of DS-SD's cutting-edge technology might be used by Zaft and transformed into a weapon. Unexpectedly, the warning from back then had already become a reality. And this fact was very likely to pose a fatal threat to the countless creatures living on Earth. This is a giant conversion device that can convert the huge energy generated by a nuclear explosion into a gamma-ray burst. The original purpose of designing this giant conversion device was to provide a reliable and powerful propulsion energy for human development in deep space in the near future. Serene stood in front of the camera with a complicated expression. She introduced the origin and performance of the Genesis to the members of the Three-Spaceship Alliance through a video call. A propulsion device developed for deep space? I once heard that DSSD was developing a forward propulsion device called a solar sail. Could this device be the predecessor of the Genesis? Butterfield touched his chin and recalled the news he had heard on other occasions in the early years. Selene nodded, and her complicated expression was filled with shame. I'm ashamed to say this. In fact, it is true. The predecessor of the Genesis was indeed the solar sail propulsion device developed by DS-SD. It's just that I didn't expect Zaft to transform it into a terrifying weapon like the Genesis before we could complete the research on its practical use. This is not Dr. Selene's fault. DS-SD itself is a neutral cutting-edge scientific research and development agency, and it is inevitable that there will be some problems with the funding it receives. We can understand this kind of thing. Lei Minkai spoke up for Selene and DS-SD at the same time. If one wanted to delve into the fact that the Genesis came from the DS-SD, then the wing-type Radiant Bearer used by the Freedom Gundam would also be included in the list of investigations. Although it was shameless, it was also one of the facts. Yes. We don't need to delve into how it was leaked from DS-SD. At the very least, what we need to solve right now is how to get rid of the Genesis, a terrifying weapon that might be launched at Earth. Lakis continued Rei Minkai's words. If, in the following battle, the Genesis is fired at Earth, then the consequence is that we humans will lose our home planet forever. At that time, even plant, which has achieved initial self-sufficiency, will not be able to sustain itself for long. Yes, even if plant had achieved self-sufficiency in terms of food, water, and other basic elements, it was impossible to completely remove plant from the Earth's ecosystem with this foundation, especially with the various food, vegetables, and fruits from Earth. After all, although the colonial satellite was large, its internal artificial ecosystem was far from being as stable as the natural ecosystem of a planet. Yes. Simmons nodded at Lakis's words. If the Genesis were to hit the surface of the Earth, the high temperature would be enough to kill all living things on the surface in an instant. Then, it would evaporate the sea and turn the Earth into a lifeless dead star for eternity. Although Simmons' words were short, it was already shocking. No one would have thought that the direction of this war would put humans and Earth on the verge of death. Perhaps, in the next second, he would be kicked into the abyss of no return by the Genesis era. How should we stop the Genesis? Based on the size of Yakindue's garrison and the power of the Genesis, our chance may only be after the second round is fired. Margot, who had been listening, slowly opened her mouth and said the most important part. But who can guarantee where the second round of the Genesis will target? The remnants of the Earth United Lunar Fleet? The lunar base of Ptolemy? Or the capital of the Earth United Lunar Fleet? Once this question was asked, everyone fell silent. Although the three-ship alliance's information on Zaft was not little, it was not much either. Especially the information on the Genesis was even less. Except for Rei Minkai, who knew what was going on, and Lakis, who had recovered some of her memories, it was the first time the others had witnessed the terrifying brilliance of the Genesis. Lei Minkai looked at the people on the screen and said slowly and affirmatively, "That's right. The second round of the Genesis will not be fired at Earth. Its target is likely to be the Earth United Lunar Base of Ptolemy. It will also wipe out the support fleet of the Earth United Lunar Fleet." "What? Where did you get this information?" Startled, Carrie subconsciously asked. Rei Minkai gently smiled. "Naturally, I have my own information channels. Moreover, before this, everyone should have already enjoyed the convenience of my information channels. Therefore, before and after the second round of the Genesis will be our opportunity to act." Others might not know, but Butterfield, who was sitting below, turned his head slightly and looked at Lei Minkai, who was standing beside Lux. He knew what was going on. "But, Knight, right now the only MS on the SS Eternity is the Free Gouda. Under such circumstances, don't you think the SS Eternity's combat power is a bit difficult? Just by passing through Yakindue's defensive line and launching an all-out attack on the Genesis." The current situation mentioned by Butterfield was a fact they had to face. As the support ship of the Free Gouda and the Justice Gouda, the SS Eternity only had the Free Gouda on hand. Even with the powerful combination of the Free Gouda and Rei Minkai, the fact that the SS Eternity lacked the strength of the Justice Gouda was an undeniable fact. The remnants of the Earth United Lunar Fleet might launch another attack. As long as that Lars Muerta Yazzie isn't stupid, he will understand the terror of the Genesis. Lakis slightly frowned, thinking back to the night when they escaped from the Alaska base. In order for the two of them to leave the base, Rei Minkai deliberately targeted Lars Muerta Yazzie. No. Perhaps at the beginning, he will think so. But I fear that after the second round of the Genesis destroyed the Ptolemy base and the support fleet, he will fall into madness. At that time, our already limited strength will be stretched thin. Lakis' conjecture wasn't wrong, but she didn't understand Lars Muerta Yazzie. After Rei Minkai added some information for Lakis, Nigger's question followed. "Kai, are you saying that the leader of the Blue Persian Chrysanthemum, Lars Muerta Yazzie, will turn around and use a nuclear bomb on plant?" "Yes. Although I haven't come into contact with Lars Muerta Yazzie, from the conclusion of our intelligence channels, Muerta Yazzie seems calm and rational, but in reality, it is a disguise. The real Lars Muerta Yazzie is probably a person with low self-esteem, a crazy person controlled by jealousy. Ray Minkai casually mentioned what he knew about Lars Muerta Yazzie. Although he didn't go into too much detail, everyone present understood. In the three-ship alliance there were naturals and regulators. Between them there would more or less be some emotions. Therefore, the existence of Lars Muerta Yazzie was not difficult to understand. If that really happens, I'm afraid we won't be able to deal with it. Look, Free Gouda and Knight, there's no need to talk about them. As our strongest combat power, they naturally can't be fixed in one direction. As for Dark Assault... Wait. Next, I'll also attack. Major Mu. Although it's a little late, it's finally assembled with the spare parts. Before Mu finished his words, Carrie took the initiative to say that she would participate in the next battle. Without looking, Ray Minkai knew that Dark Assault Captivating Beauty had gone offline. Carrie. Even though having an extra fighting force would mean having an extra layer of protection. But I hope you can understand that once you attack, there may be a mishap. Ray Minkai reminded Carrie. I know. But I don't want to continue standing in the middle of Grass Fiend's bridge and watch everyone fight bitterly without being able to do anything. So, please allow me to attack. Seeing this, Ray Minkai didn't say anything more. Indeed. In the absence of a high-end combat power like Justice Gouda, one more combat power was one more guarantee. In addition, Ray Minkai had other arrangements for Mu's operation. Major Mu. I hope you can form a temporary convoy with Grass Fiend's M1 Heretic. When Ray Minkai said this, Mu immediately felt strange. There's a special situation? Ray Minkai lowered his gaze, muttered for a moment, and then said something about Kreutzer. That man, Law Lu Kreutzer, might have become the pilot of Oracle Gouda, the same series as Gouda. This body is not the same as Freedom Gouda and Justice Gouda. The new weapons it is equipped with are enough to dominate the battlefield, just like Freedom Gouda combined with the Meteor system. Suddenly, everyone's expression changed. Everyone, including Mu, didn't believe it, but when they saw Ray Minkai's serious and dignified expression, they nodded doubtfully. So, Knight, are you asking me to avoid that person? Mu's expression was calm, but Ray Minkai could see that Mu's heart seemed to be struggling. For Mu, Law Lu Kreutzer might be a mountain in front of him. The bloodline that was cloned from Mu's father had always been on Mu's body, just like how Mu's father had been in the past. Is that so? If it's a dark attack, maybe there's a chance. But looking at the M1 Heretic's performance, even if it's strengthened according to Major Mu's driving habits, I'm afraid it won't be able to stand in front of Oracle Gouda for even one round. In other words, I'll be killed by Kreutzer in an instant. Although it's a pity, it's true. Ray Minkai and Mu looked at each other across the screen, unreservedly stating the facts in front of Mu. In the end, this negotiation ended with Mu nodding his head. Is that so? Then, I'll leave that man to you, Knight. But if you let him come, even if I'm killed by Kreutzer in an instant, I'll rush in without hesitation. I believe in Major Mu's courage. Ray Minkai nodded his head, then looked at the people on the screen. Then, the next operation is to use SS Eternity and SS Kusanagi as the main force to attack Genesis. SS Archangel will be the mobile force, ready to deal with any situation that may occur. If the remaining fleet of the Earth Alliance is determined to kill Genesis, then that's naturally the best result. After a pause, Ray Minkai continued. But if Mutta Yez Lars goes crazy after Genesis' second attack destroys the support fleet and the Ptolemy base, then SS Archangel will go to stop SS Archangel. Captain Margaret, are you ready? The captain of SS Archangel is Natale Bakilialu. Margaret's gaze froze, slightly bit her lips, then nodded her head heavily. I understand. SS Archangel will stop SS Archangel at the first opportunity. Please rest assured. Then, if there are no objections, the next operation will begin according to the results of the discussion. After Butterfield and Ray Minkai exchanged glances, the meeting ended. Coincidentally, the moment the meeting ended, the radar that had not been quiet for dozens of hours suddenly issued a piercing alarm. Warning! Discovered the remaining fleet of the Earth Alliance seems to have completed the reorganization. Now moving towards Yakin Duway. Once they heard this news, everyone in the three-ship alliance immediately tensed up. I believe everyone has heard it. Then, all MIS troops, prepare to attack. All battleships, the biggest battle tactic, target Genesis. After saying that, Butterfield turned around and looked at Ray Minkai. Knight, I'll leave the next tough battle to you. Ray Minkai nodded his head in understanding. And I will. But just as Ray Minkai turned around and entered the elevator, a pink figure suddenly floated over and followed Ray Minkai into the elevator. Lux, why did you follow me? Ray Minkai reached out to support Lux, but unexpectedly saw that there seemed to be a flash of light flickering on Lux's right hand. Hearing Ray Minkai's question, Lux first lowered her head, not daring to look at Ray Minkai. Then, she raised her head and looked at Ray Minkai, her gaze full of gentleness. Kai, you might think that I'm a little annoying, but this battle, before Lux finished speaking, Ray Minkai's hand gently pressed on Lux's lip. Don't worry. I have confidence in this battle. Even if Aslan and Kreutzer are obstructing me, I still have the confidence to win. Lux shook her head lightly. As the pink ponytail swayed gently, Lux raised her right hand and displayed the stream of light in front of Ray Minkai. That was a ring. When the ring was reflected in Ray Minkai's eyes, Lux said softly, Kai, I only ask for one thing. When everything is over, come back to my side. Ray Minkai glanced at the ring and nodded. The moment he received the ring, he gave Lux a deep hug. This is our promise, Lux. Chapter 646. The terror brought about by the Genesis terrified the remaining forces of the Earth United Lunar Fleet. But with Mutta Yazilars possibly aiming the Genesis at Earth and launching a new round of attacks, even if Bucky Lulu wanted to object, she had to admit that Mutta Yazi's speculation was likely to happen. Otherwise, the Genesis would not have been born, nor would it have crippled the Earth United Lunar Fleet in one blow. But how was it possible to destroy the Genesis just by relying on the remaining power of the Earth combined Moon Fleet? Even if the Archangel and that heaven-defying mech joined in, it would still be difficult. The future was bleak, but Bucky Lulu had to do it. Just like that, under the frightening threat of the Genesis, the remaining fleet launched a new round of attacks under the watchful eyes of the three-ship alliance. Captain Baltfield, the Archangel will now move according to the plan. Once the Archangel appeared in sight, Margot immediately gave the signal to move according to the plan. Understood. Then, it's time to start over here. Baltfield nodded, turned his chair, and looked at the pink figure who had been looking in a certain direction all along. Lux, please give the order. Lux slowly withdrew her gaze from Gao Da's position and nodded. Let's move according to the plan. Captain Baltfield, Captain Margot, Captain Sasaka, Captain Carey, don't worry about my thoughts. Just follow the plan. Lux had no intention of being entangled in commanding the battle. She understood that compared to a young girl like her who was new to the battlefield, whether it was Baltfield, Margot Lamias, Sasaka, or even Carey, they were much more experienced than her. Understood. Then, apart from following the plan, I'll temporarily take command of the Eternity and Kusanagi. As for the Archangel, Captain Margot will be in charge. Okay. Margot and Sasaka had no objections. Thus, under the escort of many MS, the three-ship alliance charged into the battlefield at the fastest speed possible. The moment before the three-ship alliance entered the battlefield, Freedom Gouda, who had once again merged with the meteor system, had already arrived in front of Yajin Duwei's defensive line. As expected, we welcome you very much. In front of him, apart from the hundreds of Kim En and Sig Gu, there was also Justice Gouda and a familiar body Ray Minkai, as well as a small team of MS Gates with dark red paint. They were the guests who had come to welcome the Free Gouda to the Yakin Duwei defensive line. Kai, can you finish them quickly? Seeing the Genesis appear in front of him again, State White Cat Zero's mouth involuntarily had a trace of sparkling. This surprised Ray Minkai. State Zero, what are you trying to do? Do you want to eat Genesis? White Cat State Zero turned around and glanced at Ray Minkai. I've already said it. You humans are so wasteful. Although these words did not seem to answer Ray Minkai's question, it had already expressed the attitude of the White Cat State Zero. In response, Ray Minkai chuckled. Really? You've given me so many surprises. But first, we have to finish off the enemy in front of us. Kim En and Sig Gu were nothing to be afraid of. Gates, pay attention. The only thing that could make Ray Minkai raise his guard was Justice Gouda and the body with inverted triangular shoulders beside him. This body looks familiar. After looking at it for a while, Ray Minkai couldn't remember where this body came from. But the only thing he could be sure of was that this body had never appeared in the main story. And this point coincidentally became the clue that Ray Minkai was looking for about this body. Freedom Gouda. Is that Ray Minkai inside? At this moment, a cold and familiar voice appeared in the communication channel. It was Aslan. But the tone of the voice was different from the Aslan in Ray Minkai's memory. It was cold and piercing. Aslan? Yes. It's me. Ray Minkai. Long time no see. In the distance, the flames of war had once again reignited. Slightly closer, it was the three-ship alliance that was speeding towards Yakinduwe. Under such circumstances, Justice Gouda, who had blocked Freedom Gouda in front of Yakinduwe, actually had the time to chat with Ray Minkai. Long time no see. Kai. I'm glad you're still alive. But now, I can't let you pass through here. Aslan's voice was cold, but Ray Minkai could hear a trace of relief. Is it the control device that State Zero mentioned? This question obviously wouldn't be answered in a short period of time. This was because the moment Aslan finished speaking, Ziggy and Ziggy had already surrounded the Freedom Gundam while Aslan and Ray Minkai were conversing. Ziggy and Ziggy had already launched their attack. The fire of the heavy machine gun. The tail flame of the anti-armor missile. At this moment, Freedom Gouda was surrounded by a curtain of light. In an instant, under the roaring bullets and the explosion of the anti-armor missile, Freedom Gouda's figure was engulfed by the terrifying flames that could destroy a steel body. Did it succeed? Kim En and Sig Gu's pilots released their fingers that were pulling the trigger and subconsciously searched for the wreckage that they imagined. However, without waiting for the smoke to disperse, the team of Gates behind Justice Gouda suddenly dispersed and quickly took up an advantageous position behind Kim En and Sig Gu and directly launched an attack. This time, Gates' attack was obviously going to miss. At the moment when Gates launched their attack, a stream of light tore through the billowing smoke and swept past Kim En and Sig Gu's formation like lightning. Moreover, at the moment when the stream of light swept past, Kim En and Sig Gu, who were beside the stream of light, were suddenly engulfed by the explosion. It was as if there was an invisible attack that blew up Kim En and Sig Gu who couldn't react in time. It's Freedom Gouda. That pair of light wings is really as the intelligence said. In Justice Gouda's cockpit, under the red mask, the pair of eyes that used to be gentle but now were incomparably cold stared at the stream of light that broke through Kim En and Sig Gu's encirclement. Aslan. Let's attack together. The speed of that body isn't something that Justice Gouda can deal with. Aslan coldly replied, but the person who made the suggestion didn't care. Because the reason why Aslan became what it was today was also because of her. All MS, listen up. Attack with full force. Don't care if you can hit Freedom Gao Da, I only ask that you try your best to suppress Freedom Gao Da's speed. The rest will be left to Justice Gao Da and my reborn Gao Da. Yes. Reborn Gao Da. It was Miss E, the new body that Alicia Pompey had used her own authority to secretly intercept. Now, she was really piloting this body to fight alongside Aslan's Justice Gao Da, and as Aslan's tactical adjutant, she was participating in this battle against Freedom Gao Da. The movement has changed? Under Alicia's command, although the remaining Kim En and Sig Gu were reduced by a third compared to the beginning, the attacks they launched had changed. That was, they no longer pursued hit rate, but instead pursued coverage. As long as Freedom Gao Da was in the airspace, it would inevitably be met with the joint suppression of these MS, forcing Freedom Gao Da to turn in other directions, just like a sheep being chased into an ambush. And because the goal was too obvious, Ray Minkai only needed to gently pull the lever, and Freedom Gao Da's forward acceleration suddenly became a vertical pull, leaving Yakin Due, Justice Gao Da, and the rest of the MS far behind. We've been seen through. Chase. Before anyone could react, Aslan's Justice Gundam had already taken the lead and chased after them. Aslan. Be careful. It was as obvious as when Kim En and Sig Gu joined forces to suppress the airspace and expel Freedom Gao Da into the ambush. Now, Freedom Gao Da's actions were clearly relying on its own super high speed to lure Justice Gao Da's side to attempt to chase, and use its high speed to lure the Miz troops led by Aslan into a situation where they were left alone. Then, with its super high speed, Freedom Gao Da could casually kill these isolated bodies one by one, until only Justice Gao Da and Reborn Gao Da were left. Without a doubt, this was a very old tactic, but it was very effective. Even if they had been seen through, Ray Minkai was very confident that Aslan's Justice Gao Da, as well as that unfamiliar body that looked very familiar, would catch up. Otherwise, Freedom Gao Da would rely on its own super high speed to rush into Yakin Due's defensive line and cause a ruckus. At that time, Yakin Due's defensive line would be faced with a dilemma of whether to defend the Genesis or to stay and defend Yakin Due. Is it here? After a series of lightning bolts, Freedom Gao Da left Justice Gao Da far behind. Other than Justice Gao Da, whose outline could still be vaguely seen, the other bodies could no longer be seen. Only a small white dot was left on the radar interface. Here it is. The stream of light instantly dimmed. Freedom Gao Da, who was pulling upwards, turned around lightly and once again faced Justice Gao Da, who was hot on its tail. Fall. Looking at the many targets in front of him that were locked onto by multiple targeting systems, Ray Minkai's lips curled up slightly, and he instantly pulled the trigger. Boom! In the blink of an eye, Justice Gao Da's eyes lit up with a terrifying radiance. Although Aslan, who was alarmed in his heart, moved quickly, he was unable to give a timely warning to his subordinates behind him. Just as Justice Gao Da continuously rolled and made an emergency maneuver to the right, barely avoiding Freedom Gao Da's sudden full-range shooting, Kim En and Higu, who were following behind Freedom Gao Da and Justice Gao Da, were all blown up on the spot by Freedom Gao Da's full-range shooting. In the short span of a few breaths, the MS team formed by Kim En and Higu, who had just forced Freedom Gao Da to run all over the place, was now reduced to just a few kittens and puppies. They were no longer able to fire off a barrage of bullets like before. Seeing this, even Aslan, who was forced to maintain his rationality at this moment, could not help but feel a little annoyed. Ray Minkai, who had eliminated a relatively troublesome enemy in a single move, was not pleased with himself for long. This was because a body with almost the same speed as Freedom Gao Da had appeared. Kai. Right. Be careful. Just as White Cat Zero's exclamation sounded, Ray Minkai subconsciously activated Freedom Gao Da's light wings. As the light wings spread out, Freedom Gao Da moved horizontally 100 meters away. And at Freedom Gao Da's original position, a purplish-red afterimage quietly disappeared. This is... A body with such speed. Kai. Over at Genesis. White Cat Zero discovered something strange once again, and this time, Ray Minkai actually guessed the true body of the body that left behind the purplish-red afterimage on the spot. A small but bright ray of light crossed the distant void, crossed in front of Ray Minkai's eyes, and shot towards Freedom Gao Da's position. No. It should be said that it shot towards the body beside Freedom Gao Da that Ray Minkai found familiar previously. In the next second, the ray of light disappeared, and the afterimage appeared again. Ray Minkai stepped on the ground with his right foot, and Freedom Gao Da suddenly moved horizontally to the right. Swoosh! Another purplish-red afterimage. Reborn Gao Da! At this moment, Ray Minkai revealed the true body of this afterimage, and also recalled a lot of information about the true body of this afterimage. It was the same series as Freedom Gao Da's body, but it was developed with a different design concept. Its biggest feature, other than being able to be separated from the body, was the unique backpack system that could be used as an MS, and was the light craft system that was paired with Genesis. It could use the energy obtained from the gamma rays emitted by Genesis Alpha to accelerate. In other words, as long as Genesis charged Reborn Gao Da would be able to obtain a speed similar to or even equal to the winged radiance bearer that Freedom Gao Da was currently equipped with. This is tricky. State 0. Ray Minkai pursed his lips. He did not expect that Freedom Gao Da, who relied on his super high speed, would actually encounter an opponent at this moment. What's there to worry about? Compared to Ray Minkai's seriousness, White Cat State Zero did not care much. Now, the only thing that could make White Cat State Zero concerned was the Genesis. After a series of attacks, Alicia discovered that Freedom Gao Da was not only agile, but also seemed to be able to predict Reborn Gao Da's attack route, which made Alicia feel pressured. Originally, she thought that she could rely on Reborn Gao Da's light craft system, as well as the inexhaustible energy supply from Genesis, to defeat Freedom Gao Da. But now, it seemed that this plan would have to be put aside for the time being. Alicia, you will restrain Freedom Gao Da. After silently watching Freedom Gao Da and Reborn Gao Da's attack and defense, Aslan finally made his move. Okay. Without hesitation, Alicia, who almost always gave in to Aslan's requests, exploded on the spot. First, she relied on the light craft system to burst into high speed and blocked off most of Freedom Gao Da's retreat route. Then, she raised the large beam rifle in her hand and shot out beams of light, quickly shortening the distance between Freedom Gao Da and Justice Gao Da. Under Alicia's maneuvers, she really forced Freedom Gao Da and Justice Gao Da to engage in close combat. Chapter 647. Under the cover of Reborn Gao Da, the light saber-wielding Justice Gao Da rushed directly in front of Freedom Gao Da. He brazenly slashed out a slash, but did not achieve any results. Don't look at how Freedom Gao Da looked a little clumsy after combining with the meteor system. In reality, his maneuverability was much higher than Justice Gao Da's. It was just that a normal slash would not be able to touch Freedom Gao Da's side at all. He could not even touch the meteor system. So fast. Failing his attack, Aslan reacted quickly and had his beloved mech throw out a beam boomerang, buying some time for Justice Gao Da to retreat. But before the beam boomerang could complete its mission, it was cut in half by an even more resplendent light. That resplendent light's attack range even brushed past the retreating Justice Gao Da. This was the meteor system's large beam saber that was jokingly called the 40-meter saber. Although using such a large beam saber to cut down the seemingly unremarkable beam boomerang was indeed a bit of a waste. But from the actual effect, Freedom Gao Da's attack had indeed forced Justice Gao Da to retreat, creating an opportunity for the next step of the exchange. Beams followed one after another. It was Reborn Gao Da, seeing that Justice Gao Da had been forced back by Freedom Gao Da's 40-meter saber. Reborn Gao Da once again sped up, appearing in Freedom Gao Da's attack path first. He raised the large beam cannon in his hand and fired at Freedom Gao Da. Swoosh. Reborn Gao Da's speed was extremely fast, but Freedom Gao Da's speed was even faster. In the blink of an eye, both sides had accurately aimed at each other and fired off a blinding beam attack at the same time. In the vast darkness of the void, two beams of light shot out from Reborn Gao Da's and Freedom Gao Da's guns at the same time, and then brazenly collided in the next second. The moment the violent and terrifying energy particles collided, they stirred up everything in a frenzy, recklessly colliding with the enemy, and then the energy produced at the moment of collision exploded with a loud bang. Boom! The violent explosion tore through space, causing Alice and Ray Minkai's vision to be blinded by white light, temporarily losing sight of each other's figures. However, losing sight of each other did not mean that the battle was over. Instead, it meant that the battle had become even more intense. In the white light, the red mech was like a ghost, taking advantage of the moment when both sides had temporarily lost vision, appearing above Freedom Gao Da's head, waving the beam saber in its hand from above Gao's cockpit. This attack was extremely fatal, but the moment the beam saber was about to pierce through Freedom Gao Da's cockpit, Freedom Gao Da, who should have been motionless and unresponsive to the attack from above, suddenly moved back a short distance, barely dodging the attack. What? The red mech that had launched the attack was Righteous Gauda. Even Aslan, who was now under the control of cold rationality, could not help but be momentarily stunned when he saw the attack that he had been so confident in being dealt with so easily by Freedom Gauda. Boom! While he was stunned, a violent impact quickly followed. Moving past Freedom Gauda, Righteous Gauda, who had not yet retracted his attack, was viciously kicked by Freedom Gauda, sending Righteous Gauda flying. Aslan. As soon as the gamma rays from Genesis disappeared, Reborn Gauda, who had recovered his acceleration energy, gave up on pursuing Freedom Gauda. Instead, he rushed forward and caught Righteous Gauda. I'm fine. Continue to fight. Under the red mask, Aslan's face was gradually becoming more and more ferocious. Understood. Alicia's lips moved, but she still nodded in response. On Freedom Gao Da's side, he once again began to deal with the enemy with high mobility. Previously, Jean and Sigur's MS team had already been ordered by Alicia to return to Yakinduwe to recuperate. Only the Gates team, known as the Defenders, was left behind. This team made Ray Minkai feel a little dignified. Is it the photographers? Matthias was able to deal with Maltese so easily because the photographers that Maltese relied heavily on had been transferred away. Now, the enemy that appeared in front of him, the aura of the Gates team, seemed to prove this point. Photographers team. Restrain Freedom Gauda. The same order, but with different result. Compared to Jean and Sigur's actions, this Gates team, although few in number, moved at full speed the moment the order was given. In the blink of an eye, they formed a net in front of Freedom Gauda. Insignificant skill. Seeing this, Ray Minkai didn't even frown. With a slight pull of the lever in his left hand, Freedom Gauda immediately performed a series of rolling maneuvers, throwing the beam barrage of the three gates to the back of his head. Then, Freedom Gauda, who had not yet recovered his balance, raised his right hand and swung the large beam sword in front of him. The moment the brilliance surged past, a fireball exploded under the large beam sword without any warning. It was Gates. It turned out that a Gates that had been lying in ambush at some point in time had been destroyed by the Freedom Gundam that had made the first move. Lily number 5. A young girl's scream sounded in Gates' communication channel. Calm down. Continue to attack. Just as Alicia's voice sounded, Rebirth Gauda, who had once again accelerated, caught up to Freedom Gauda. In the blink of an eye, two streams of light crazily interweaved in front of Gates and Justice Gauda, drawing two terrifying trajectories in the air. 1. Just as the two streams of light interweaved again, Aslan's heart tightened and he immediately shouted, "Everyone! Spread out! Once again. Once again. Once again, Freedom Gao Da's full barrage of bullets descended the instant Rebirth Gao Da retreated. It turned out that Freedom Gao Da, who was engaged in an intense high-speed battle with Rebirth Gao Da, still had the energy to seize the opportunity and launch a full barrage of bullets, catching Aslan and the others, who couldn't interfere in this high-speed battle, off guard. Under the beam of light that tore through the darkness were the missiles that were hurtling towards them. In just a short moment, under Aslan's gaze, the full barrage of bullets that had erupted during this high-speed battle drowned out several gates. Boom! 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 3 fireballs exploded one after the other. Behind the exploding fireballs were the reality that 4 gates had been destroyed. Aslan. Sorry. With a flash, Rebirth Gao Da once again appeared beside Justice Gao Da. At the same time, the gamma rays from Genesis traversed the void, replenishing the energy of Rebirth Gao Da, who had used up all of his acceleration energy. This was the disadvantage of Rebirth Gao Da compared to relying on his own energy and the powerful self-control of the winged Radiance Bearer. Rebirth Gao Da couldn't leave the support of Genesis to obtain the terrifying performance of super acceleration. This was also the reason why Rebirth Gao Da, even if he had the same super speed as Freedom Gao Da equipped with the winged Radiance Bearer, was still unable to do anything to Freedom Gao Da. No. We miscalculated. Under the mask, Aslan's gaze became more and more solemn. This was a fact that they couldn't avoid. Among Yakindue, sitting in the command center, Patrick's face was rather ugly. The battle between Aslan's group and the Freedom Gundams was not missed at all by him. Ray Minkai. From the moment Ray Minkai appeared in Patrick's line of sight, he had always been regarded as the representative of stimulating the fighting spirit in plant. No matter how much the Salafists preached about the evil and ugliness of the Earth Union, it couldn't be compared to the words of someone who had survived the disaster of Unit 7. However, before this idea could be implemented, Ray Minkai was transferred to investigate the Earth Union's hidden development of a new body. Now that he thought about it, perhaps it was from that investigation mission that everything started to get out of his control? Especially when Ray Minkai boarded the Silver Wind, Speaker Sarah. Do you want me to attack? From the current situation, Aslan doesn't seem to be able to deal with that body. While he was deep in thought, Kreutzer's voice sounded. It will still take some time before Genesis launches again. If that body breaks into the vicinity of Genesis during this period of time, I'm afraid it will cause some unnecessary trouble. Although, I don't think that body will cause any effective damage to Genesis, which is protected by phase shift armor. Hearing this, Patrick turned around and looked at Kreutzer. Kreutzer, you mean to be on the safe side? Kreutzer nodded calmly. Yes. Speaker Sarah. Patrick's stern gaze swept back and forth on Kreutzer's mask a few times before he slowly opened his mouth. Fine. This mission will be handed over to you, who was unable to destroy SS Eternity in time. This is your last chance. If you can't deal with that body and SS Eternity, then you don't have to come back. Yes. Speaker Sarah. Kreutzer stood at attention and saluted. He then nodded at Mia and said respectfully, "Then, forgive me for taking my leave." Looking at Kreutzer's departing figure, Patrick once again looked at the main screen. However, he used a voice that only he and Mia could hear to ask, "Lux, what do you think of Kreutzer as a person?" Mia was stunned and then went silent for a moment. Captain Kreutzer, perhaps he is a person with his own thoughts. Mia did not answer much, but it was enough. As for Patrick, is that so? Then I understand. Kreutzer, who had left the command center, quickly walked to the changing room. Looking at the neatly arranged pilot uniform in the wardrobe, as well as the bottle of medicine beside it, Kreutzer's mouth suddenly curved into a sinister smile. Ray Minkai. I didn't think you would really reach this step. This is very good. Outside of Yakindue, Ray Minkai and Aslan's group were still in the midst of their battle. The impact of Gao Da's multiple rounds of firing had already deeply planted a seed of fear in the hearts of Aslan's group. As long as they gathered together for a split second, then Ray Minkai, who was adept at seizing opportunities, would definitely control Gao Da to fire a volley of bullets. Even if the reborn Gao Da was there to hold them back, it would still be the same. What kind of person would be able to grasp that fleeting opportunity in the midst of a high-speed battle? No one knew the answer to this question, and no one would think about it. The gates were destroyed one by one. From the beginning until now, the complete Gates team had been reduced to only a few under Gao Da's attack. This made Alicia very angry. After all, this was the power she had prepared through the librarian after coming to this world. Although the Gates team was only a part of it, if it was destroyed like this, Alicia would definitely be heartbroken. Aslan. In her anger, Alicia actually grasped a great opportunity. In the midst of the high-speed battle with Gao Da, she quickly changed from a humanoid MS to a four-clawed MA. She suddenly rushed up and grabbed the left wing of the meteor system. Caught you! The four-clawed MA quickly moved the muzzle and aimed at Gao Da. Alicia's cold voice rang out, and a beam of light burst out. As the blazing light swept out, the right wing of the meteor system was instantly pierced through, leaving behind a huge wound with countless sparks jumping about. However, the one that should have been pierced wasn't the meteor system, but Gao Da. No! Alicia screamed in her heart and instinctively pulled the lever. The reborn Gao Da in the four-clawed MA form immediately turned into a conical MA form with high-speed propulsion performance. Swoosh! The moment the reborn Gao Da left the meteor system, a brilliance tore through the darkness and cut off a large part of the reborn Gao Da's tail. And the cause of all this was the reborn Gao Da that should have been pierced through by the large beam cannon. It escaped really fast. Ray Minkai glanced at the two large beam swords on the left and right of the meteor system that had already been scrapped and shook his head slightly. He didn't expect the meteor system to leave in such a way. However, this wouldn't reduce the power of Gao Da. On the contrary, after losing the burden of the meteor system, the speed of the flying wing-type transmitter would be even faster. It's just that Aslan and the others didn't seem to know this. Perhaps they were still excited about finally solving the problem of the meteor system. Hum. The buzzing sound of the flying wing-type transmitter became lower and lower. The killing aura emitted by the reborn Gao Da didn't decrease in the slightest compared to the moment when it merged with the meteor system. Not good. Everyone retreat. The reborn Gao Da's attack is coming. Aslan's warning had just sounded when a wave of palpitations followed. This wasn't coming from the reborn Gao Da. It was coming from behind. It was coming from the direction of Yakin Due. In the huge fortress satellite, a dark figure silently slid out of space and headed straight for the battlefield. Under that increasing speed, several small, easily overlooked shadows quietly flew out from the dark figure and quickly disappeared into the dark space. Then, in an instant when humans couldn't detect, they shot at the reborn Gao Da. Hum! The dark green beam instantly weaved a terrible net of light that trapped the reborn Gao Da. Ray Minkai. The knight that protects the princess. We finally meet. Nice to meet you. Chapter 648. The pitch-black mech scattered deadly light beams in the void, restricting the movement of the free Gao Da to a certain range. At the same time, it also arrived at the side of the Justice Gao Da and the reborn Gao Da. Aslan. Gates can go to the other side. The three of us are enough here. As soon as he appeared, Kreutzer requested for the remaining Gates to withdraw from the battlefield and move to the other side to fight with the Earth's Moon Alliance fleet. Aslan did not say anything, but Alicia nodded in agreement to Kreutzer's request. In fact, it was indeed so. Although the Gates mech was piloted by the imprints, when faced with an enemy whose combat power was far beyond what the imprints could handle, the imprints were no different from the other soldiers piloting the gold mech. With a command, the remaining gates surrounding the Free Gauda sped up and left. They regrouped and flew towards the Earth's Moon Alliance fleet, leaving the Free Gauda to face off against the Justice Gauda, the Reborn Gauda, and the Oracle Gauda, who had entered and left in the middle. The Oracle is as high as Kreutzer. The appearance of the Oracle Gauda was not beyond Rei Minkai's expectations. It was just that Oracle Gundam had appeared a little too early. According to Rei Minkai's prediction, the Oracle Gauda should appear after the Justice Gauda and the Reborn Gauda were heavily injured by the Free Gauda piloted by him. However, he did not expect the Oracle Gauda to appear earlier. Hey, that mech has some skills. Be careful. Okay. The White Cat State Zero could tell that the Oracle Gauda's program was far more dangerous than the Reborn Gauda, who could catch up with the Free Gauda. This was indeed the truth. Rei Minkai's fear of the Reborn Gauda was far less than when he saw the Oracle Gauda. The appearance of the Oracle Gauda represented the arrival of the strongest boss in this battle. This was different from the situation where Rei Minkai was able to rely on the mech's performance to crush Kreutzer. With a flap of his wings, Gauda left behind several afterimages and escaped from the firing range of the dragon cavalry hidden in the darkness. Furthermore, as the radiant wings on Gauda's back grew brighter and brighter, the nimble dragon riders began to show signs of being unable to catch up to Gauda. This made Kreutzer slightly surprised. Looks like the Free Gauda's speed is a bit faster than before. Aslan. The dragon cavalry pursuing Gauda paused for a moment, then turned around and returned to Oracle Gauda's location. It looked like they were preparing for the next round of charging. However, at the moment when the dragon cavalry retreated, the Reborn Gauda caught up with the Free Gauda once again. In an instant, the high-speed battle between the two mechs began again. However, this time, Ali was not like before, where she had the intention of destroying the Free Gauda. Instead, she was entangled with the Free Gauda and tried her best to control the Free Gauda's range of maneuverability. The reason for such a big change was the appearance of the Oracle Gauda. As one of the first people who participated in the design of the nuclear mechs produced by Zaft Gauda, Justice Gauda, Oracle Gauda, Holy Accord Gauda, and the Reborn Gauda, Ali was very clear about what kind of power the Oracle Gauda had. Even though the current Oracle Gauda had just completed emergency offline preparations, it could still exert the level of power it possessed under Kreutzer's piloting. Has it really been removed? In the high-speed battle, whenever Alice engaged in close combat with the Freedom Gundam, she would always try to activate a certain device or activate a certain awakening program. However, the result was no different from a clay ox entering the sea. There was no response. This result was undoubtedly the backup plan she had planted when she participated in the design and manufacture of the Free Gauda and the other Zaft nuclear mechs, which had been cracked by Rei Minkai. There was an abnormal signal just now. It seems to be the activation signal of the device I discovered before. The White Cat's eyes flashed as it stared at the Reborn Gauda that was gradually falling behind the speed of the Free Gauda due to the depletion of the super acceleration energy. The source of the signal should be from that mech. Activation signal? The Free Gauda retracted its light wings, and the mech continuously rolled a few times, avoiding the beam attacks of the Reborn Gauda and the Oracle Gauda in one breath, and accelerated to the periphery of the battle between the four nuclear mechs. At the same time, Rei Minkai's gaze also shifted from the Gauda's body to the Reborn Gauda. The activation signal that the White Cat mentioned was probably the device that could control the pilot that was discovered in the cockpit of the Free Gauda. That's really a coincidence. Although that was what he said, Rei Minkai did not show any mercy. Even if the one in front of him was the Justice Gauda. Although the reborn Gauda retreated after exhausting the super acceleration energy, under the restraint of the Oracle Gauda and the small plane on his back, the Justice Gauda quickly rushed to the front of the free Gauda. Swoosh! Swoosh! At this moment, it was time for Aslan to engage in close combat. The moment the Justice Gauda waved his hands, 2 rays of sword light accompanied the dragon cavalry attack launched by the Oracle Gauda again, forcing the free Gauda to engage in close combat. Do you want to fight, Aslan? The free Gauda raised his left hand, and directly used his shield to block the first beam sword attack of the Justice Gauda. Immediately after, the free Gauda directly clenched his fist, and punched the left wrist of the Justice Gauda. The violent collision immediately caused the beam sword in the Justice Gauda's left hand to fly out, and the Justice Gauda's beam sword attack was broken on the spot. Aslan was unmoved by this. Instead, he quickly activated the Fire God Cannon on the head of the Justice Gauda, and took advantage of the moment when the free Gauda's door was wide open. He fired a series of Fire God Cannon shots at the free Gauda's cockpit. Flames of different lengths wantonly covered the free Gauda's armor with a layer of flickering gauze of light, and the whistling shells even drew dazzling sparks on the armor. But in the midst of those frightening sparks, the Fire God Cannon on the head of the Justice Gauda was unable to cause any damage to the free Gauda. Those seemingly frightening attacks didn't cause any damage, but the violent vibrations caused by the attacks were insignificant to the Rei Minkai, who was progressing towards the inhuman level. The Fire God Cannon on the head of the Justice Gauda was still roaring, but the free Gauda suddenly lowered his head, and in an unimaginable way, used an unexpected headbutt attack by Aslan, Ali, and Kreutzer to interrupt the Justice Gauda's attack in one breath. Boom! Sound couldn't be transmitted in a vacuum. However, the moment the free Gauda's unexpected headbutt collided with the Justice Gauda's torso, Aslan's ears exploded with a boom, causing him to temporarily lose control of the Justice Gauda. By the time Aslan reacted, the radiance emitted by the light wings of the free Gauda had already disappeared from the Justice Gauda's sight. Rei Minkai. Aslan wasn't unfamiliar with this attack. Even though the current Aslan was still under the control of the Red Mask, his mind couldn't help but recall the time when he was in the military academy, when he had just completed the MS piloting course and started the basic training of MS piloting course, an incident that had once happened. Aslan, who was using the training type Rei Minkai for combat training, ended the first MS piloting course with a headbutt. The moment the memories of the past and the battle in front of his eyes gradually merged together, a terrifying torrential pain swept through Aslan's mind like a storm. Ah! Aslan couldn't help but let out a low growl from the intense pain. Aslan, are you hurt? The reborn Gauda, who was filled with super acceleration energy, once again arrived in front of the Justice Gauda. Aslan's pale face, which couldn't be hidden even with the red mask, appeared in front of Alicia's eyes. No, not at all. Continue. Aslan ignored Alicia's distressed gaze. Right now, his mind was only filled with the desire to finish off the free Gauda as soon as possible so that the pain that swept through his mind would dissipate. However, due to the delay between Aslan and Alicia, after losing the control of the Justice Gauda and the reborn Gauda, the free Gauda had already rushed in front of the Oracle Gauda. Speed isn't everything, Knight. Perhaps they had predicted that the free Gauda would break through the obstruction of the Justice Gauda and the reborn Gauda. The moment they saw the free Gauda's beautiful wings of light streaking through the darkness, the dragoons that were hovering around the Oracle immediately turned their guns in unison and fired at the empty space in front of the Oracle Gauda. In the blink of an eye, 3 large dragoons with 9 beam cannons as the main force and 8 small dragoons with 2 beam cannons as the support appeared in front of the free Gauda. If the free Gauda advanced even a little bit, he would definitely collide with this light net. Even if he didn't explode on the spot, he probably wouldn't end up well either. Of course, this light net looked terrifying, But just like how Kreutzer had predicted the movements of Ray Minkai and the Free Gouda, Ray Minkai had also predicted Kreutzer's movements. In the instant the light net appeared, the light wings on the Free Gouda's back suddenly pressed down, and he actually managed to get close to the light net and directly charged above the Oracle Gouda. "Your skills aren't bad," Kreutzer snorted coldly, and the Oracle Gouda suddenly turned to the right. A beam of light pierced through the air, brushing past the Oracle Gouda's shoulder armor and disappearing into the darkness below. "Same to you." This attack was Ray Minkai's reply to Kreutzer's light net. Both sides knew that their previous attacks couldn't possibly cause much damage to the other side. What they did have was just probing each other. Kai. Coming. Behind. The Oracle Gouda's attacks were like heaven overflowing giant waves, wave after wave, not giving him any time to catch his breath at all. Every time the dragon cavalry attacked, it would always accurately appear in front of the Free Gouda, forcing the Free Gouda to change his movement path. Law Lu Kreutzer. Is this man's prediction this terrifying? Ray Minkai believed that the Free Gouda's speed was already enough to show disdain for the entire battlefield. However, he never expected that under this type of situation, Kreutzer would actually take the initiative to have the dragon cavalry appear in the Free Gouda's movement path. 1. There was no way to avoid it. Then, there was only one word left. Fuck! Under the high-speed movement, the Free Gouda continuously changed his position, taking advantage of the moment when the dragon cavalry with the quantum computer installed by the Oracle Gouda adjusted their pursuit path to continuously raise the muzzle, shooting two small dragon cavalry that got too close to the Free Gouda and just happened to be in front of him. Boom! Boom! Amidst the two small explosions, the brilliant afterimages of the wings of light appeared in front of Kreutzer's eyes. However, looking at the figure in front of him pushed forward by the brilliant wings of light, Kreutzer remained unmoved, not revealing a trace of panic at all. In the air, an arc of light flew out diagonally from below, heading straight for the Free Gouda's waist. If it were a normal pilot, this attack would probably have cut him in half. However, Ray Minkai only moved his fingers slightly, and the Free Gouda easily avoided this unexpected attack amidst a few scattered afterimages. Meanwhile, at the end of the arc of light's flight path, was the Justice Gouda, who had finally arrived. Kreutzer, who had received the Justice Gouda's support in time, did not say anything else, immediately piloting the Oracle Gouda to retreat again, at the same time having the remaining dragon cavalry attack one after another for the Justice Gouda's following movements. Troublesome. Ray Minkai's gaze quickly moved across the screen. Inadvertently, in the dark space where the flames of the joint battle between Zaft and Earth flickered, there seemed to be something moving quickly. This scene was as natural as water flowing through a canal. Ray Minkai actually saw the dragon cavalry that relied on the cover of the dark space to quickly move and occupy advantageous attacking positions with a maneuver trajectory that ordinary people could not detect at all. It's there. The wings of light abruptly dimmed, and the Freedom Gundam's speed abruptly plummeted as it quickly unfurled its 5-colored cannons. It then unleashed a barrage of attacks toward the seemingly empty space before it, but in reality, there were several fearsome figures lurking within. Whoosh! The moment the colorful cannon fired at the same time, the dazzling brilliance made Kreutzer suddenly feel a stinging pain. Yes, the colorful cannon was not aimed at empty space, but at several dragon cavalry that happened to enter the best attacking position. Among the dragon cavalry, there were both large dragon cavalry and small dragon cavalry. After a round of firing, the dragon cavalry equipped by the Oracle Gouda had lost nearly half of its power. This power? Is this the power of God you were talking about? Gil. Kreutzer was shocked and subconsciously remembered the excitement that Gilbert, who participated in the rescue after the Unus 7 incident, showed after returning. This was a very rare thing for him. Kreutzer, we may have found the key to change the world. Chapter 649. God. The black and white flags were placed on the square by the two people, but the two people who were controlling the black and white chess pieces were not here. Yes, God. Under the black shoulder-length hair was a typical refined scholar. Those long and narrow eyes flickered with the radiance of wisdom, as well as the persistence hidden deep within. Gil. Although I had entrusted you to find a way to improve Rem's condition, I don't remember making you become so. Under the silver mask was a face that muttered to itself for a moment. So much like a devout believer. Believer? A surprised expression surfaced on Gilbert Dylandal's face, and then he laughed out loud. He did not care about his opponent at all. That good friend of his who had been using the silver mask to show himself after becoming famous in a single battle actually used the religious term believer to describe himself. This scholar, who had a pretty good reputation in the field of genetic research. Kreutzer. If my discovery is not wrong, perhaps you can use the word believer to describe me. Dylandal's calmness made Kreutzer feel surprised. Your discovery actually made you make such a change? He. Kreutzer. If you have a little more time, perhaps you might be able to see a miracle. Dylandal paused for a moment, then added another sentence. Probably a miracle that is even more terrifying than the super-regulator that Yulian Xiangzi is after. Terrifying miracle? Kreutzer laughed. Miracles are never related to terrifying. Gil. Is that so? Dylandal shook his head, as if he was sighing, and said, That's true. But if there really is such a day, this miracle, perhaps it would be extremely terrifying. Kreutzer. The sighs of his old friend rang in his ears like a ghost in the midst of the fierce battle. Kreutzer's heart gradually sank to the bottom. God. Following another small-scale dragon knight being destroyed by Gao Da's gun, Kreutzer's cold voice suddenly sounded. God? This is just a delusion that humans conjure up when they are pursuing power. There are no gods in this world. Gao Da's cold voice resounded in Oracle's cockpit. Oracle Gao Da's movements suddenly changed from fighting while retreating, coordinating with Justice Gao Da and Rebirth Gao Da's attack rhythm to a one-sided assault. The most conspicuous thing was that Gao Da's remaining dragoons, large and small, did not care about their energy consumption at all. They immediately launched a frenzied attack, firing beam after beam at the Gao Da, completely ignoring the possibility of hitting the high-speed Gao Da. His movements changed? In Rei Minkai's eyes, Oracle Gao Da's movements became unusually fierce. No matter if it was the dragoons or the original Oracle Gao Da, the coordination between the two was simply flawless, and also unusually terrifying. If the current Oracle Gao Da was just an ordinary No Mu or even the Kira from Rei Minkai's memory, the former would probably be instantly killed on the spot, and the latter would also fall into a desperate situation. Is it a drug? Or is it the abyss? From the previous few encounters, Rei Minkai did not realize that Kreutzer could erupt with such terrifying strength. While being shocked, he was also guessing where Kreutzer's explosive strength came from. Gao Da quickly turned around, raising the beam rifle in his hand and firing continuously, but he was unable to kill off the dragoons that were scattered all over the place. At this moment, the dragoons seemed to have a life of their own, and one could not tell that they were mobile weapons controlled by a cold quantum computer at all. This change made Rei Minkai's gaze even more serious. I've caught you! While Gao Da and Oracle Gao Da were locked in a fierce battle, the previously lagging reborn Gao Da once again caught up to the free Gao Da, giving the dragoons circling around Gao Da a chance to catch their breath. Otherwise, no matter how fierce their attacks were, the dragoons would sooner or later run out of energy and become nothing more than trash floating in space. Annoying! Reborn Gao Da! Rei Minkai really wanted to cut down the reborn Gao Da with his sword. But if he was unable to deal a fatal blow to the reborn Gao Da and allow the independent cockpit to escape back to Yakindue, then the free Gao Da would have to face the reborn Gao Da in the near future. Once again involved in a high-speed battle with the reborn Gouda, the free Gouda fiercely threw out the shield on his left arm, but the reborn Gouda dodged the whirlwind shield with a flip. But this flip was an opportunity for the reborn Gouda to be shaken off by the free Gouda once again. "I'm going to be shaken off again?" Alicia clenched her teeth and looked at the light wings that seemed to be powered by an endless amount of energy, unwilling to give up. Even if the reborn Gouda had the massive energy support of the Genesis behind him, he could only maintain super acceleration for a short period of time. There was no way he could fly at super high speed for as long as the free Gouda could. With a flap of the light wings, the free Gouda once again shook off the reborn Gouda and rushed towards the Oracle Gouda. Fortunately, the Oracle Gouda was in front of the Justice Gouda at this moment. Rei Minkai. As soon as the free Gouda appeared, the Justice Gouda immediately burst out with his strongest firepower. He didn't want to kill, he only wanted to slow down the free Gouda's speed. Light beam, fire god cannon, one after another, they continuously poured bullets at the free Gouda. But in the face of the free Gouda's high-speed movements, the Justice Gouda's firepower had no effect at all. It didn't slow down the free Gouda's speed at all. Aslan only had one choice in this regard. That was to charge towards the free Gouda and collide with it. One had to know that this was not a rational choice. But only in this way would the Justice Gouda have a chance to stop the free Gouda. The next second, the Justice Gouda's right hand flipped around his waist and combined the two beam swords. With his fastest speed, he charged towards the free Gouda, dragging two beams of light behind him. Aslan. The charging Justice Gouda was like a mountain pressing down on him. But Rei Minkai wasn't frightened by the indomitable momentum. Instead, his eyes were solemn and his hands quickly reacted. The red mech pressed down like a thunderstorm, bringing that horrifying beam of light with it as it chopped down. The free Gouda, who was targeted by it, just lightly turned his body to the side and avoided the Justice Gouda's attack. But this wasn't the full extent of the Justice Gouda's attack. The attack that the free Gouda had avoided was clearly within Aslan's expectations. Before the beam of light from the chopping sword dissipated, it suddenly turned horizontally and went straight for the free Gouda's waist. No, it should be said that it was going straight for the free Gouda's cockpit. Remember, when Aslan went to war, Patrick Sala had given the order to try their best to take back the free Gouda. If they couldn't do it, then the free Gouda would be destroyed. In Aslan's mind, directly piercing through the cockpit of the Freedom Gundam was perhaps the best way to complete the task entrusted to him by his father, Patrick Sala. But Rei Minkai, and even the free Gouda, wouldn't let Aslan's plan go as he wished. In a split second, a terrifying throbbing swept through Aslan's heart. That throbbing that almost suffocated Aslan wasn't even carefully tasted. His innate instinct to seek luck and avoid calamity drove his body to make the first reaction. Dodge. Dodge. With the fastest speed, with the most sensitive reaction, at the first moment, he avoided the cause of that throbbing. The moment a bright light lit up in front of Aslan's eyes, the Justice Gouda escaped from the free Gouda at full speed under Aslan's instinct, brushing past the two beams of light that exploded from the free Gouda's shoulders. Running really fast. The whale plasma beam cannon on the free Gouda's shoulders fired loudly, but it didn't hit the Justice Gouda. This made Rei Minkai frown slightly. That was an attack that was close to zero distance, and Aslan was actually able to dodge it in time? This was a clear difference from the Aslan of the military academy, no, before and after the battle to seize the Gouda. This was just a small sigh in the midst of a fierce battle, because the opponent wouldn't leave much time for Rei Minkai to sigh at the speed at which humans changed. Hum! A blazing beam of light broke through the darkness, heading straight for the other end of the void, attempting to hit the free Gouda's waist. But the free Gouda nimbly avoided it. This attack didn't come from anyone else, but from the reborn Gauda's large beam cannon. Who would have thought that after receiving another charge, the reborn Gauda would give up on using super acceleration to continue fighting the free Gauda, and instead choose to provide long-range firepower support that could cover the Justice Gauda. But, just relying on the reborn Gauda's beam cannon, which had powerful firepower, but whose methods were unpredictable, was enough to contain the free Gauda? Since Alice had chosen the reborn Gauda as her base, she naturally had her own plans. After she reached out and pressed a few keys on the keyboard on the right, the large beam cannon in the hands of the reborn Gauda actually underwent some changes that Ray Minkai didn't know about. This is a weapon designed for Aslan. Lion. I'll let you be the first sacrifice. The cursor locked. The trigger was pulled. From the shape of an ordinary cannon barrel, it transformed into a strange main cannon with 6 heat-dissipating grooves that spread out one after another behind the main cannon. On the left and right sides of the main cannon, there were 3 small cannons that spread out. Instantly, a terrifying recoil burst forth. It actually pushed the Rebirth Gundam, which had exploded with all its power to propel the backpack, several hundred meters away. And the real culprit behind this terrifying recoil was like a small sun rising in the sky, wantonly spreading its own light, while launching an attack on the free Gauda. The terrifying heat caused a slight distortion in the surrounding space, and at the same time as the reborn Gauda, 5 small stars split from the dazzling star, but they didn't lose their brilliance at all. But from the momentum, from the scene, as long as the reborn Gauda was hit by even one of the small stars, the free reborn Gauda would definitely end up dead or seriously injured. Kai! Get out of here quickly! Without the White Cat's shout, Ray Minkai knew how to deal with it. However, just as the free reborn Gauda moved, the light that was supposed to move in a straight line had a slight change. It caught up. At the moment when the free reborn Gauda accelerated, the light also began to accelerate. At the moment when the free reborn Gauda turned, the light also began to turn. This was a light with tracking capabilities? No. This was a beam weapon with tracking capabilities. One must know that in the Seed world, there had never been such an amazing beam weapon. The Parliament of Destiny? The only thing that could explain this phenomenon was the Parliament of Destiny. Radiant Bearer, full power. Without hesitation, Ray Minkai increased the power of the flying wing-type Radiant Bearer to full power operation on the spot. Swoosh! Suddenly, the free reborn Gauda's figure turned into a stream of light. As for the ball of light that was chasing after him, it was like a headless fly that had lost its head, scurrying around in all directions. It wasn't until they discovered the remnants of Jean N and Shigu's remains that they swarmed over and devoured the remains that had long been shattered into pieces. Boom! At this moment, fireballs exploded repeatedly on the battlefield, but it did not make Alice happy. That body's thrusters are too scary. Perhaps this conclusion had been reached long ago. It was just that Alice was not willing to admit it. The stream of light crossed the battlefield, and the alarm in Kreutzer's heart rang loudly. Are they looking for me again? Looking for me, a sinner that should not exist in this world. The remaining dragon riders of the Oracle Gauda came out in full force, and quickly interweaved a light net in front of the Oracle Gauda. They repeated the same trick and tried to stop the free reborn Gauda. This time, the free reborn Gauda stopped in front of the light net. The stream of light disappeared quietly, and the free reborn Gauda's figure appeared on the other side of the light net. What? Do you still want to learn from the princess that you are protecting and persuade me to surrender? Knight. The free reborn Gauda stopped moving, but it did not mean that the Oracle Gauda stopped attacking. In Kreutzer's increasingly high-spirited and presumptuous voice, the dragon riders continued to attack, constantly shooting out fatal light beams, trying to shoot down the free reborn Gauda. Buzz! Buzz! The remaining dragon riders shot wildly, but they did not touch the free reborn Gauda at all. As the battle intensified, Ray Minkai's intuition became clearer and more sensitive. No matter how strange the Dragon Riders' movements were, the moment they attacked, Ray Minkai could always capture the position of the Dragon Riders a second before and react accordingly. Therefore, the moment the Dragon Riders shot out a light beam, the free reborn Gao-da saw through their location. In this intuition that seemed to be prophetic, the quantum computer controlling the Dragon Riders exhausted all its resources, but it could not calculate the free reborn Gao-da's next move. Every moment, every second, the free reborn Gao-da's actions could always be one step ahead of the quantum computers, causing its attacks to hit the void of nothingness. Jill, this is the power of God that you persevered with. Seeing this, Kreutzer's voice was extremely gloomy. Chapter 650. At the edge of the battlefield, on one side of Yakin Due's defense line, a blood-red mech wandered alone in the airspace that had yet to be burned by the flames of war. Is that the Freedom Gao-da and the Justice Gao-da? Although there was still some distance from the battlefield, this blood-red mech still cast its gaze toward the most intense battle on the battlefield. Kira's hands quickly tapped back and forth on the keyboard, constantly improving the program to improve the electronic eye system of the blood-red body, which was the Holy Accord Gundam he was piloting, so that it could catch up to the high-speed battle that was enough to subvert human understanding. Is it over? Kira, with his powerful programming ability, was defeated in the end. After some improvements, under the surveillance of the Holy Accord Gao-da's electronic eye, the system could indeed barely catch up to the speed of the reborn Gao-da. However, it was still unable to catch up to the Freedom Gao-da that had a pair of beautiful light wings behind it. Being in such a high-speed state for such a long time, even the body of an adjuster probably can't hold on, right? Kira could not imagine what it would be like if he were in the Freedom Gao-da's high-speed state. Would he be struggling to hold on? Or would he vomit blood the moment the terrifying overload erupted? Kira had never imagined or encountered any of these. Just looking at the Freedom Gao-da that could escape from the siege of the Justice Gao-da, the Reborn Gao-da, and the Oracle Gao-da in the blink of an eye and launch a counterattack, Kira had the illusion that he could not keep up. Yakin Due calling for the Holy Accord Gao-da. Yakin Due calling for the Holy Accord Gao-da. Please answer. Just as Kira was paying attention to the fierce battle between the four Gao-das, Yakin Due's call came. This is the Holy Accord Gao-da. Please speak, Yakin Due. Kira was shocked. After retracting all his attention, he immediately responded to Yakin Due's call. Holy Accord Gao-da. Now the Genesis is about to complete its second launch. Please defend against the joint attack of the Earth before the Genesis launches again. Be especially careful not to let the Earth's joint nuclear bomb hit any of Plant's satellites. The order from Yakin Due made Kira frown, but he showed no signs of objection. Gao-da has received the Holy Accord. Begin. There was only one reason Kira had piloted the Holy Accord Gao-da on this battlefield. It was to save LH-033. Subconsciously shifting his gaze towards Yakin Due, Kira clenched his teeth and forced himself to concentrate. I will let you live. Lakis. Ahead was the remnants of the Earth Alliance fleet that gradually appeared in Gao-da's radar range. That was what Kira could do to save LH-033. The long and sharp horn slowly pointed in the direction of the remnants of the Earth Alliance fleet as Gao-da turned around. Then, the quantum virus that could paralyze the radars and electronic eyes of battleships, fighter jets, and even MS's surveillance systems was once again launched from Gao-da's horn. The next second, in the increasingly bright flames of the backpack, the Holy Accord Gao-da headed straight for the remnants of the Earth Alliance fleet. It was believed that with Gao-da's strange quantum virus, the remnants of the Earth Alliance fleet might suffer a setback. But this did not matter to Ray Minkai. Because he was still unable to extricate himself from the battle with Gao-da, Rebirth Gao-da, and Oracle Gao-da, They're really clinging to me. Although Gouda was under the buff of the wing-type Radiance Bearer and firmly controlled the rhythm of the battle, the three Goudas cooperatively stalled Gouda, preventing him from breaking through. Kai. That thing is about to launch. The white cat, who had been paying attention to the Genesis all this while, growled. Rei Minkai, who heard this, looked at the small screen at the side and saw that the Genesis was about to finish changing its mirror. TSK. SS Eternity. SS Eternity. Leave the Genesis firing range immediately. The Genesis is about to launch a second round. Rei Minkai's call immediately shocked the three-ship alliance. Almost at the same time, Director Simmons and Dr. Serene also issued the same warning. Captain Baltfield, inform Archangel and Grasshopper to leave the Genesis firing range. Lakis did not hesitate, but Baltfield frowned. According to Knight's speculation, the second round of the Genesis is likely to come from the moon base Ptolemy. Then, Archangel and Grasshopper immediately leave the orbit between Yakin Due and the moon base Ptolemy. Hurry! The second round of the Genesis is about to launch. The three-ship alliance did not dare to delay. Before the battle, Rei Minkai's speculation was still vivid in their minds. Whether it was for their own survival, or to preserve the strength of the three-ship alliance, Maul and Zasaka quickly responded. Just as the three-ship alliance urgently retreated, the smile on Patrick's face gradually deepened as he sat in Yakin Due's fortress. Looks like Kreutzer has completed his mission well. Father, the Genesis is ready. Mia, who was standing beside him, said softly after exchanging glances with the weapons controller. Patrick nodded slightly and stood up. He clenched his fists again and shouted loudly, "Let's go! Genesis, launch!" Under Patrick's order, the terrible light that seemed to come from the abyss of hell appeared again. The moment it wantonly bloomed its own light, the entire battlefield once again fell into a standstill. Except for Yakin Due's Zaft fleet and the three-ship alliance, Earth's joint fleets Bucky Lulu and Muddalars did not know where the Genesis was going. The Genesis has been launched. In the bright and terrible light, Bucky Lulu trembled all over and subconsciously ordered, "Hurry! Calculate where it's going." The result of the calculation quickly came out. That was the Earth's joint moon base Ptolemy. How can it be? Bucky Lulu's mind went blank, and she could barely think of anything. In addition to the support fleet sent by the Earth's joint moon base Ptolemy, there was another person in the depths of the base. A person of vital importance to the Earth's joint space fleet, especially to the scattered 8th Fleet. Dwayne Halbarton. Muddalars, who witnessed the launch of the Genesis again, screamed again, and his face became more and more distorted. Fear? Anger? No one knew. The only thing they knew was that this man, who had insisted on stopping the Genesis from launching again as soon as possible, was about to go crazy. Time returned to half an hour after the first launch of the Genesis and severely damaged the Earth's joint moon fleet. In the depths of the Earth's joint moon base Ptolemy, in the tense atmosphere, most people's faces were more or less mixed with a trace of fear. Maybe half an hour ago. Maybe a few hours ago. No one knew where the news came from. However, they knew that before the moon fleet, which had the will to win and the weapons, could achieve any results, they were defeated by Zaft with a terrifying weapon called Genesis. They could only regroup with the remaining warships and MS-class under Zaft's watch, waiting for the moment to launch another attack. At this moment, the Ptolemy base on the far side of the moon could only put all the battleships, MS, and even nuclear weapons they owned into the support fleet to support Bucky Lulu and Muddalars as quickly as possible. However, in this tense atmosphere that was gradually controlled by panic, a woman wearing the standard white military uniform of the Earth's joint female officer was accompanied by 2 Earth's joint soldiers and came to the deepest part of the Ptolemy base. It was the area where the man who was under house arrest by the Earth's joint. No, it should be said that the Atlantic Federation military was afraid of him. Who is it? The moment the woman appeared at the end of the passage, the guards guarding the door immediately raised their muzzles and pointed at the woman. They were not affected by the military uniform on the woman's collar that represented the rank of lieutenant colonel. Atlantic Federation, Audrey Amert, Lieutenant Colonel. Now I am ordered by the headquarters to meet with Brigadier General Duan Halbarton. The woman who was pointed at by the muzzle did not panic. Instead, she calmly took out a document from her pocket and waved it in front of the soldiers. Headquarters order? The woman's performance and the document in her hand made the soldiers puzzled. The soldiers who could stand here were all direct subordinates of the Ptolemy leaders of this lunar base. If there were any changes or orders, they would inevitably be the first to know. But the woman in front of them who claimed to be from the headquarters and had orders made them puzzled. I'm very sorry, Lieutenant Colonel. We need to report to the higher-ups. Although they had doubts in their hearts, the soldiers still decided to report according to the procedure. Unexpectedly, the two soldiers standing behind the woman suddenly went berserk and knocked out all the soldiers who were guarding the door and were about to pick up the phone to report. Sigh. Why do you have to do this? Originally, you could still live. Looking at her subordinates who had dealt with the guards and quickly started to crack the door, the woman sighed faintly. That's right. The identities of the woman and her group were fake. The woman and the soldiers behind her were not from the Earth Union, nor were they from Zaf. The woman's true identity was the mysterious woman who commanded the Circle of Midgard, Jormungand. Originally, according to the original plan, she was to follow Siegel Klein back to Earth, but unexpectedly, she came to this dangerous base. Boss. It's done. Jormungand nodded slightly, then walked toward the door that was slowly opened after being cracked. Boss, we don't have much time. Please act as soon as possible. Okay. You guys stay here and act according to the situation. Understood. The crisp sound of footsteps came from afar, attracting the attention of the middle-aged man who was sitting steadily on the chair and killing time with a newspaper. Did someone from the headquarters come again? Putting down the newspaper, a pair of wise and calm eyes looked at the graceful figure standing outside the door. Ha! Who would have thought that the headquarters would actually send such a great beauty this time? But it's a pity that I've already told them everything. Don't tell me they want this old bag of bones to stretch out my muscles? I didn't know that the wise general praised by night would be such a scoundrel. Although Halberton's words just now didn't sound like much, in fact, they had already offended Jormungand. But Jormungand calmly retorted Halbarton. Ha! Same to you. Halbarton chuckled and casually placed the newspaper on the table. He stood up and looked into Jormungand's eyes. Compared to your disguise, my crude scoundrel is just a joke. After a pause, Halbarton said again. You must know that in the Atlantic Union, there has never been such a beautiful and unknown female lieutenant colonel. Jormungand was taken aback for a moment, then smiled calmly. Is that so? As expected of the wise General Halbarton. I'm lucky to have seen it today. Jormungand stopped being polite, and stopped probing Halberton's background. Instead, she chose to go straight to the point. Dwayne Halbarton. Half an hour ago, the lunar fleet that carried nuclear weapons to attack plant failed. The main reason for their failure was that Zaf's new weapon, the Genesis, destroyed most of the warships and MS in one fell swoop. Genesis. Halbarton frowned and immediately caught the meaning of Jormungand's words. You're saying that the next attack of the Genesis will be here? Jormungand nodded but didn't say anything. Gradually, a smile appeared on Halberton's face. I didn't expect that at this critical moment, someone would come to save this old bag of bones. Presumably, part of this base is already under your control. Yes. Although time is short, we can still guarantee that Sir Halbarton will leave this base safely. Then hide at the side and watch the base get destroyed by the Genesis? Halbarton asked, but he didn't get an answer from Jormungand. Halbarton narrowed his eyes slightly, as if he was trying to find a flaw in Jormungand's calm face. In the end, he didn't find anything. He understood. The other party would appear in front of him without him noticing. The most basic purpose was to let him live, not to save this base. No. To be precise, they didn't want to save the military faction that controlled this base. Who sent you? As soon as this sentence came out, Jormungand knew that Halbarton was moved. We're just insignificant snakes. Sir Halbarton, please leave with us immediately. If we continue to delay like this, Genesis will attack us. Since he chose to believe, Halbarton didn't doubt him. He followed Jormungand all the way and quickly came to the spaceport on the upper level of Ptolemy. There, Halbarton saw his old subordinate. Most of the crew of the 8th Fleet, which was supposed to be scattered, lined up at the entrance of the port, waiting for Halbarton's return. Admiral, please give the order. As soon as he saw Halbarton, the adjutant stepped forward and asked for instructions. Halbarton didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked at Jormungand. This is also your plan? Jormungand smiled. This is just a means to ensure victory. Sir Halbarton, please act immediately. If this continues, not only this base, but also Earth will be hit by the Genesis. Okay. Halbarton nodded, then looked at his old subordinate and said in a sonorous voice, That's right. I won't say anything unnecessary. This is a battle of life and death, and also a battle to the death. After the war, whether we win or lose, I'm afraid we will be court-martialed for treason. Even so, are you willing to follow me to stop the Genesis? As soon as he said this, everyone who had been waiting for Halbarton for a long time used all their strength to loudly respond to Halbarton. Yes. We swear to follow Admiral. It was a simple answer, but it represented an oath to follow without turning back. Halbarton's eyes were slightly red. After turning around and nodding slightly at Jormungand, he raised his right hand and swung it down. Then, in the name of Duan Halbarton, the 8th Fleet, set sail. Target, Yakin Duway. Chapter 651. The terrifying gamma-ray burst was like a terrifying torrent that could destroy everything in the world. It crossed a long distance in the void and appeared in front of the 8th Fleet, who had already avoided the gamma-ray burst. From the eyes of everyone in the 8th Fleet standing in front of the screen. From Halbarton's eyes. It swept across. It hit the Ptolemy base, which had just discovered the escape of the 8th Fleet and issued a warning. In an instant, Halbarton saw the image that was still in contact with the Ptolemy base a second ago. The face that Halbarton was very familiar with, but it was also a face that Halbarton himself had been framed by. Under the gamma-ray burst, the face distorted, expanded, and finally exploded. The communication from the Ptolemy base was cut off. In the next moment, the huge mushroom cloud rose from the Ptolemy base and rose to an altitude of at least 10 kilometers above the moon. At this moment, the entire 8th Fleet was silent. If they didn't follow Halbarton's footsteps and leave the Ptolemy base first, they would have become part of the terrifying gamma-ray burst and the huge mushroom cloud. Calm, Admiral. Even the adjutant, who had always been able to remain calm at all times, couldn't help but swallow his saliva. Don't panic. Now we are still alive. Halbarton raised his right hand, signaled the adjutant not to be nervous, then slowly closed his eyes and pondered for a moment. Then, the strategist turned his head and looked at the female officer, no, the mysterious woman who had remained calm. Thank you very much for your assistance. Now your speculations have come true. So, it's time for us to strike. Jormungand smiled gently and nodded slightly. You're right. At least, we weren't targeted by the 8th Fleet because of a moment of arrogance. That's a good thing, isn't it? Halbarton glanced at Jormungand, who didn't answer the question, and then said, "At least, we have a foundation of mutual trust between us. The Eighth Fleet has now left the Moon's orbit and is rushing to the Yakin Due defense line at full speed. But do you think we can make it?" After witnessing the destruction of Ptolemy by Genesis, there was only one thought left in Halberton's mind. It was likely that the third Genesis would be aimed at Earth, at the capital of the Atlantic Federation. At that time, under this attack of Genesis, the entire Earth would definitely become a dead planet with no signs of life. "I will." He would make it in time. That Lord won't let Genesis hit Earth. To Halberton's surprise, the mysterious woman who called herself Jormungand seemed to have a strong trust in the existence behind her. Halbarton couldn't help but feel a little curious. After all, if it weren't for the existence of a powerful program, it would be impossible to control a considerable part of the power of the Earth and the Moon base in such a short period of time, thus allowing the scattered Eighth Fleet to reassemble and leave the base ahead of the rest. "I believe that there will be a chance for you to meet that Lord, Commander Halbarton." The smile on Jormungand's face became even more mysterious. "Speaking of which, not long ago you also met with Sir Harbaudu. However, at that time, Milord was just a nameless brat." "How could that be?" Halbarton was stunned. He didn't believe what Jormungand said, and even thought that Jormungand was joking. "Ha! Believe or deny is only a matter of time, Commander Halbarton. So, it's useless to talk about Sir Harbaudu." Jormungand naturally wouldn't say that Ray Minkai was the existence behind the Ring of Midgard. Therefore, after a feint, she took the initiative to end the topic. Halbarton frowned at her half-hearted attitude, but there was nothing he could do. Although Jormungand was now standing alone in the flagship of the Eighth Fleet, other than the two dispensable guards, he was not the only one in the fleet. As long as Halbarton made any strange movements, this mysterious woman would not be affected at all, and she might even make the Eighth Fleet and Halbarton pay a heavy price. That was how Halbarton believed. No matter how he looked at it, the mysterious woman who could easily control part of the power of the Ptolemy base was definitely not an easy existence to deal with. "Then, I look forward to the day when I meet that Lord you're talking about. But now, let's seize the moment." "That's right. Back to the moment when the Genesis was launched for the second time. Under Patrick's command, the Genesis, which had brought terror to the Earth's combined lunar fleet not long ago, once again let out a roar of slaughter. In just a short moment, everyone's gazes were once again occupied by the terrifying light that traversed the void. They did not move their gazes away from it at all. Any existence that stood in the way of this terrifying light would inevitably be destroyed by the gamma-ray burst, leaving only the distorted body floating in the void. Ha 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 ha. The moment the Genesis was successfully launched, Kreutzer's wild laughter rang in the communication channel. It was loud and crazy. Ray Minkai couldn't help but frown. "Kreutzer, I know what you're planning." Ray Minkai sent out the first communication with Kreutzer since the battle started. Amid the crazy laughter, the moment the mushroom cloud that traversed the void hit the moon and destroyed the Earth's combined lunar base, Ptolemy rose into the sky. Kreutzer snorted coldly. So what? Right now, aren't you standing here and struggling bitterly?" Ray Minkai. Struggling. Ray Minkai faced Kreutzer's snort and responded with a sneer and a retort. "Do I look like I'm struggling now? Kreutzer, don't look down on people. The one who should be struggling is you." The light wings behind Freedom Gauda suddenly expanded, and in the blink of an eye, it had expanded to a huge size that Kreutzer and the others had never seen before. Under the huge light wings, Freedom Gauda's existence was as small as a moth flying into a flame, but it made people unable to move their eyes away from him. Look, that trace of colorful flowing light emerged from the root of the light wings. It started from the root of the light wings like a wave that engulfed everything and quickly spread to the entire pair of huge light wings. The moment the stream of light completely occupied the light wings, a faintly glowing halo that inadvertently attracted the attention of humans quietly appeared behind the colorful light wings. That's solar wind? How is that possible? Alice, who had the identity of an outstanding mechanic, immediately saw through the truth of Freedom Gao Da's current form. Solar wind? Kreutzer's gaze froze, but there was someone who reacted faster than him. A red light flashed, and it was Justice Gauda who rushed over. Under Aslan's control, Justice Gauda, who instantly erupted, first threw all the remaining beam boomerangs towards Freedom Gauda, then after emptying all the ammunition he had left in the battle, he pulled out the last 2 beam swords and slashed towards Freedom Gauda. This round of attacks was fierce, and it was also the most terrifying attack that Aslan and Justice Gauda had unleashed since the start of the battle. But Aslan didn't know, Alice didn't know, and even Kreutzer didn't know what kind of changes had happened to Freedom Gauda at this moment. The beam boomerang that drew an arc in the void had yet to approach Freedom Gauda, but it was suddenly cut off by a light belt that appeared around Freedom Gauda's body. Boom! Not good. Aslan, come back quickly. The moment the beam boomerang was cut off, Alice simply couldn't care about what happened to Freedom Gauda. She directly gritted her teeth and once again used the MA form of Reborn Gauda to fire a powerful beam cannon. The buzzing of the beam cannon was still echoing in the cockpit of Reborn Gauda. That beam cannon was one step ahead of Justice Gauda and hit Freedom Gauda. Boom! The light of the explosion was dazzling. But Alice's heart was cold. There was no damage. Reborn Gauda's full-strength attack did not cause any damage to Freedom Gauda at all. At the moment when the beam cannon hit Freedom Gauda, Alice saw a layer of light suddenly appear in front of Freedom Gauda, blocking Reborn Gauda's attack. How is this possible? Freedom Gauda again and again showed a strong performance that exceeded Alice's expectations. It made Alice have a faint feeling that her plan could no longer keep up with the changes. Fortunately, under Reborn Gauda's attack, the charging Justice Gauda was able to stop. Kreutzer, originally, I wanted to save this attack for Genesis, but now I'll give it to you. The flames quietly dissipated, and the huge pair of colorful light wings once again appeared in front of Kreutzer, Alice, and Aslan. It was the moment of victory and defeat in this chaotic battle. Streaks of light that glowed faintly but couldn't be ignored protected the Freedom Gundam's surroundings as if they had been bestowed with life. They expanded and expanded at times, flexed and extended at other times. Under the encirclement of the streaks of light, Freedom Gauda actually had a trace of divine aura, which made Kreutzer secretly clench his teeth. God's power! The moment Kreutzer, who was unwilling to accept his good friend Gilbert Delander's deduction, let out a low roar, the few remaining dragoons of the Oracle Gundam moved out once again. However, no matter how fast the Dragon Knights attacked, the streaks of light surrounding Freedom Gauda were even faster. Before the phantom-like Dragon Knights, who had caused many misplayers to die with grievances, could enter the best attacking position, they were split into 2 by the streaks of light that chased after them. Boom! Boom! The explosions of the Dragon Knights made Kreutzer's heart more and more heavy, and also more and more angry. Ah! God! An unwilling roar erupted from Kreutzer's heart. If there are gods in this world, then why didn't they appear earlier? Look, this is the result of the human that you love so much. Under the situation where the Dragon Knights were destroyed and Oracle Gauda's attacking methods were mostly abolished, Kreutzer was still unwilling to give up on attacking Freedom Gauda. Instead, he piloted Oracle Gauda and kept flying up and down in the void, moving left and right. Under the pursuit of the streaks of light, he seized every opportunity to attack Freedom Gauda. 1. The MAM-221 beam rifle's beam attacks were as dense as rain, constantly creating opportunities for Oracle Gauda to advance. Look, the human that you love so much created the dream in pursuit of power, and the result: stronger than others, before others, standing above others. Competition, jealousy, hatred. In the scene created by the streaks of light and the beams of light, Oracle Gauda was still unwaveringly charging in front of Freedom Gauda despite having his shoulder armor and his huge backpack cut off. For the so-called power, he did not hesitate to use any means to fight for all the resources he could use, creating ugly and sinful results. And this result is me. In front of him was the flowing rainbow wings. It was the Freedom Gauda who faintly emitted a divine aura. Furthermore, it was the man that his good friend Gilbert Dylandel called God. Answer me, God. This is the world that you desire. When you see this world, do you also feel incomparably angry and nauseous? Answer me. Schwa. A streak of light slashed down from the sky, cutting the MAM-221 beam rifle in Oracle Gauda's hands in half. Boom. In the roar of the beam rifle's explosion, Oracle Gauda raised his left hand, and the MAMV-05A composite armament on his left arm shot out a blazing beam of light. It was a large beam sword. At this moment, Oracle Gauda, who paid a heavy price and was covered in wounds, finally rushed in front of Freedom Gauda. He raised the large beam sword activated by the MAMV-05A composite armament and stabbed it straight at Freedom Gauda's torso, where the cockpit was located. Boom! A roar swept across. But Freedom Gauda was unscathed. How can this be? Oracle Gauda's large beam sword was enough to cut down the Earth Alliance's battleship, but it was useless in front of Freedom Gauda. I'm not a god. Kreutzer. The streak of light slashed down from the sky, cutting Gauda's MAMV-05A composite armament in half, making it follow in the footsteps of the beam rifle. Boom! In the explosion, a dazzling white light erupted without warning at the fracture of the MAMV-05A composite armament, causing Freedom Gauda's monitoring system to suddenly lose its function. When the scene in front of Ray Minkai's eyes became clear again, he saw Kreutzer, whose left arm was cut off, quickly running back towards Yukindue. Then there was Justice Gauda and Rebirth Gauda once again rushing over. Running really fast. Kreutzer's decisive retreat was completely different from the crazy Kreutzer from before, causing Ray Minkai to be greatly surprised. Chapter 652. Detected the energy reaction emitted by the Light Energy Protection Circle. Serene. Free Gauda is using that system. Simmons sucked in a breath of cold air and looked at the screen in front of him in surprise. Celine, who heard the sound and looked over, frowned. Director Simmons, Dr. Celine, what happened? Images of Lakis and Margot popped up on the screen, and even Caesar looked over. Simmons and Celine looked at each other and gave the right to speak to Celine. In fact, when we were modifying the heat dissipation system for Free Gauda, Councilman Yuri Amafai and I installed a function of the Radiant Bearer onto Free Gauda. The main goal is to give the Freedom Gundam a greater chance of success when attacking the Genesis. As she spoke, Celine looked at the energy reaction data that would only appear when the Light Energy Protection Circle was activated, and sighed slightly. It's just that Free Gauda activated this function before it even got close to Genesis. In other words, the situation has forced Guy and Free Gauda to use the Light Energy Protection Circle? The worry in Lakis' voice was obvious. I'm afraid this is true. When Butterfield's avatar appeared at the bottom of the screen, it stated a fact. From the moment Free Gauda approached Yukindue, it fought with many of Zaf's MS units. When Genesis launched the second round, the mecha that fought against Free Gauda was still the Justice Gauda, as well as the new Mecha Reborn Gauda and Oracle Gauda Reborn Gauda. Oracle Gauda? These two unfamiliar names shocked everyone. Zaft actually went offline and produced so many new mecha? Could it be? Butterfield nodded and confirmed Margot's doubts. Yes. It's the same as Free Gouda, it's the same series of nuclear mecha. Facing such an enemy, Gouda had no choice but to use the light energy defensive circle. If it were me, I would have used it earlier. Then, the rest will depend on us. The taciturn Sasaka had a solemn expression on his face. Yes. Captain Sasaka, Captain Maurice. Inform everyone that we're heading to Genesis at full speed. Lakis raised her head and looked at Yakin Due's side, where a faint flash of light could be seen, where Freedom Gouda was still in the midst of a fierce battle. However, the situation of the battle was tilting in the direction that the three-ship alliance had predicted. Captain, the remnants of the Earth Alliance fleet began to turn around. Our target seems to be Plant. Mirialia, who had been paying attention to the movements of the Dominion Angel, exclaimed in surprise. Everyone's expression changed, but in the next second, they exchanged glances and made arrangements. As expected, Blue Persian Chrysanthemum's thoughts were really easy to guess. Then, Archangel will go and stop the Dominion Angel. In addition, Nigger, you go too. Is there a problem? In the face of the frantic remnants of the Earth Alliance fleet, the three-ship alliance finally followed the original plan and tried their best to divide their forces to intercept the desperate remnants of the Earth Alliance fleet. Understood. Although Nigger wanted to support Free Gouda, he knew that the most important thing in front of him was to intercept the remnants of the Earth Alliance fleet and the nuclear weapons launched by it that could destroy Plant. Nigger, I'm counting on you. Lakis nodded slightly at Nigger. Nigger pretended to be relaxed and gave a thumbs up. Good. I hope Guy won't blame me for not supporting him. Lakis smiled softly and shook her head. No, Kai isn't the kind of person who gets angry over these things. It's just, Nigger, you have to be careful. Understood. At the same time, in the bridge of the Dominion Angel, a tense atmosphere was also pervading. The reason for this situation was the scene of the lunar base being destroyed by the Genesis era through the satellite surveillance. Lars Mutayazi, who was deeply stimulated by the mushroom cloud on the screen in front of him, had given up the previous idea of destroying the Genesis as soon as possible. Instead, he turned the muzzle and tried to fire all the remaining nuclear weapons at Plant. This was undoubtedly a method of mutual destruction. Bucky Lulu objected on the spot, but it was met with the dark muzzle in Lars Mutayazi's hand. You're such an annoying woman. From the beginning until now, you've been nagging. Who do you think you are? Lars Mutayazi's face was extremely distorted. You're just a puppet chosen by that group of incompetent people. If you obediently listened to my command, wouldn't it be over? Don't you know who's responsible for this? If the Peace Pioneer plan was implemented from the beginning, would Earth still be threatened by the Genesis? Bucky Lulu clenched her teeth tightly, but under the threat of her life, she had to bow her head. What are you waiting for? Turn around. Turn around. The Genesis only needed the people from the Archangel. Let's go kill the source of evil. Quick, quick. Lars Mutayazi went crazy. Even the Earth Alliance battleships other than the Lord Angel went crazy. Especially the motherships of the Agamemnon, which carried the Peace Pioneers, were even more so. There's no need to think about retreating. There's no need to think about anything else. While the fleet turned around, all the Peace Pioneers who had already launched their attack ignored Zaft's interception and charged towards Plant with all their might. Are you crazy? Gouda didn't even need to aim in the duel. He just casually raised his gun and pierced through the two Peace Pioneers. Isaac, the Earth Alliance is charging towards Plant. The shotgun in Storm Gouda's hand never stopped, but the moment the remnants of the Earth Alliance's fleet turned around, they released all of their airframes in one breath. Regardless of whether they were intact or damaged, as long as they could move, as long as they could press the launch button, the attacking airframes would join this wave of attacking troops. The vast number of people made Diego's head go numb. Buzz! 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 At this time, two beams of light appeared from the upper right side of Gouda and Storm Gouda, blowing up the two-piece pioneers that were about to rush past them. This is Isaac, who felt something, suddenly raised his head and saw a familiar airframe covered in pitch-black paint appear there. Attack Gouda? Nigger! You bastard, why didn't you stop Genesis? What are you doing here? As soon as he saw the familiar shape, Isaac immediately recognized the airframe and the pilot who was driving it. Isaac! There's no time to explain now. Kai is stopping Genesis. I'll stop the Earth Alliance's nuclear weapons. The moment Nigger's dignified face appeared on the screen in front of him, Isaac gritted his teeth and finally roared in a hoarse voice. Diego! This guy is a teammate for now. Don't hit him. Diego sighed helplessly. Yes. Then, Nigger, welcome back. When the former teammates reunited again, it was actually the moment when they faced the nuclear weapons flying in the sky. The fierce light beam hovered around Freedom Gouda's body, leaving no flaws that could be caught by Justice Gouda and Rebirth Gouda. From the time when Oracle Gouda fainted and ran back to Yakinduwe, the remaining Justice Gouda and Rebirth Gouda launched at least 3 joint attacks, but they were unable to break through the light energy defense circle of Freedom Gouda. It seems that this is the other party's last resort. Aliko glanced at the small screen on her right. That was the real-time feedback from the Justice Gundam about the damage to its body. The shield was broken. The left hand was cut off. The rifle was also cut off. Even Justice Gouda's basic armed beam sword was destroyed one by one under the many counterattacks of the light energy defense circle. It even implicated Justice Gouda's right hand and broke several fingers. From head to toe, the only place Justice Gouda was intact was probably the small plane on his back. But what could he do by relying on the small plane? The defense of the light energy defense circle that Freedom Gouda had unleashed was almost perfect. At that moment, the light energy defense circle that was hovering around Freedom Gouda's body was almost able to withstand a 360 degrees live bullet attack. Even if it was a beam attack, it might not be able to hit Freedom Gouda, who was displaying the Radiance Bearer with all his might, right? Did it fail? Aliko's face was gloomy, but unexpectedly, Justice Gouda suddenly did something unexpected. After launching a thunderous attack in the blink of an eye, Justice Gouda suddenly separated the small plane from his body and rushed towards the light energy defense circle that was protecting Freedom Gouda at a speed faster than the main body. One. As the light pillars flashed continuously, they swept past the small plane from top to bottom, left to right, and continuously slashed out wounds on its body. Without a doubt, the result of Justice Gouda releasing the small plane and rushing towards the light energy defense circle first was that the small plane exploded under the counterattack of the light energy. And this explosion was what Justice Gouda, no, it should be said that it was what Aslan wanted. Because the moment the small plane was destroyed by the light energy, it only exploded into a dense and huge cloud of smoke that enveloped Justice Gouda, completely covering his tracks. Aslan? Aliko saw and understood Aslan's intentions. Without hesitation, her hands moved, once again raising the large beam cannon in her hands. Reborn Gouda aimed at Freedom Gouda and fired. Of course, Aliko didn't expect this attack to hit Freedom Gouda. What she wanted to do was to use this attack, or the following attacks, to pin down Freedom Gouda and create an opportunity for Justice Gouda's next move. After images kept appearing between the beams of light. This allowed Aliko and Reborn Gouda's attacks to hit empty air. But, in this wave of attacks, Freedom Gouda's position gradually moved closer to the area where the smoke was, until the smoke that had yet to dissipate suddenly rolled, and Justice Gouda rushed out with the remaining Fire God cannon in his head. Only then did Aliko's attack complete its final goal. Aslan, do you think you can fool me? However, Aslan and Aliko's actions didn't fool Ray Minkai. Moreover, even if Justice Gauda relied on reborn Gauda's suppression and the smoke to rush in front of Freedom Gauda, what could Justice Gauda, who had lost most of his weapons, do? 2887 Reality, perhaps it was just that magical. The pillar of light cut through the darkness, cutting off Justice Gauda's left shoulder and right leg, but it couldn't stop Justice Gauda from successfully rushing in front of Freedom Gauda. The moment the broken Justice Gauda appeared in front of Ray Minkai's screen, a tremor spread throughout Freedom Gauda's body, rushing straight into the cockpit. Kai. This guy wants to self-destruct. White Cat State Zero's expression changed and shouted loudly. What? Ray Minkai's expression changed, and a look of shock appeared on his face. Even if only his right hand and left leg were left, the broken Justice Gauda still held onto Freedom Gauda tightly, and didn't have the slightest intention of letting go of Freedom Gauda. At the same time, in Justice Gauda's cockpit, the red light that suddenly lit up made the red mask on Aslan's face even more terrifying and frightening. Now, absolute rationality told Aslan that if he wanted to destroy Freedom Gauda, the only choice was to perish together with him. Ka! A small keyboard popped out from Aslan's right hand. Aslan's cold gaze moved down, and while looking at the small keyboard, his right hand didn't slow down and pressed on it 3 times. Aslan! Stop! Aliko's scream, and a violent impact that caused a crack to appear on the screen in front of Aslan's eyes, appeared in front of Aslan at the same time. Bang! An afterimage suddenly appeared, and fiercely collided with Aslan's red mask. A crack appeared from this. At the same time, it caused the flowing light under the red mask to suddenly pause for a moment, and Aslan's right hand froze. No! This. A flood of memories suddenly swept through Aslan's mind. A heart-wrenching pain suddenly engulfed Aslan's heart. Under the impact of the two, Aslan lost control of Justice Gauda, and also let Freedom Gauda, who was waving his fist fiercely at Justice Gauda's cockpit, free himself. Bang! A black shadow broke through the air, and fiercely kicked Justice Gauda's chest, sending him flying hundreds of meters away. When the afterimage appeared again, Freedom Gauda was already rushing towards Genesis. Aliko wanted to chase, but there was nothing she could do. Looking at Justice Gauda, who had fallen into a deathly silence after being caught by reborn Gauda, Aliko could only give an order. All imprint troops, immediately intercept Freedom Gauda. In the blink of an eye, dots of light appeared from Yakin Due's defensive line, from the direction of Plant, and rushed straight towards Genesis. Counting carefully, the number of dots of light was actually no less than 50. Could it be that this was all the imprint troops under Aliko's control? Chapter 653. The imprint troops left one after another, chasing after the free Gauda that was surrounded by a light energy defense circle, leaving the Holy Accord Gauda alone to stop the peace pioneers. Originally, under the obstruction of the imprint troops and the other Zaft MS teams, the peace pioneers who were heading straight for April City did not succeed in breaking through the defense. Therefore, the Holy Accord Gundam, which could not be seen by any of the airframes present, could freely support Zaft's side, attacking everywhere and eliminating any peace pioneers who broke through the defense. However, the moment the imprint troops suddenly left, Zaft's defense line collapsed. Even though the remaining Kim and Heg-gu had doubts, they could only grit their teeth and use all their strength to stop the peace pioneers that had already reached the maximum firing distance. Why did those MS teams suddenly leave? The sudden change in direction made Kira feel very strained. Although the Holy Accord Gauda that he piloted had enough firepower to stop the peace pioneers' advance, the Holy Accord Gauda, as well as the remaining Zaft MS teams, gradually became powerless in the face of the enemies that were breaking through the defense line. Damn it! What the hell is going on? Backup! Backup! Yakin Due, quickly send backup! The call for help sounded in Zaf's communication channel, making Kira even more nervous. Yes. Now, whether it was his own Zaft MS team, or the Earth United MS team, the Peace Pioneers team could not see the Holy Accord Gouda on the radar. Even if the Holy Accord Gouda was in front of April City, what the Peace Pioneers team saw was nothing but air. Beams of light constantly shot out from the beam pistol in the hands of the Holy Accord Gouda, which was known as the Porcupine Array, and blew up the Morbius MA of the Peace Pioneers team. Along the way, Kira, who had just blown up the Peace Pioneers team, had no choice but to immediately steer the Holy Accord Gouda in another direction. There, 3 nuclear bombs were being fired, heading straight for April City. You must not destroy any of the colonial satellites. Guarding Plant was equivalent to guarding LH-033. As long as Plant was blown up, even if it was just one colonial satellite, LH-033's life would probably disappear like a candle in the wind. However, even if Kira used all his strength like the Zaft pilots around him, there was always a limit to the number of enemies that the Holy Accord Gouda could stop. Especially now that the Holy Accord Gouda could not be captured by the enemies around him, even if the Peace Pioneers team was blocked by Gouda, they would probably still run into him. Hum. The Porcupine Formation's beam pistols continued to attack and change targets under Kira's control, but it was like trying to put out a burning cart with a cup of water. What do we do? The team by Gouda de team was teams, and Kira the Peace Pioneers team. Unexpectedly, an accident by de team Gouda de Zaft by Zell. A Morbius, which was lucky enough to escape from Gouda's attack but unfortunately had its cockpit destroyed by a stray bullet, suddenly rushed to the side of the Holy Accord Gouda. Coincidentally, the Morbius pilot saw for the first time the true face of the ghost that had been hiding in the darkness and was not captured by the warship's radar. That's a blood-red body? Is it the devil that has been stopping us from destroying the adjusters? Since the start of the war, the remaining Earth Alliance fleet that suddenly turned to attack Plant had already released 3 waves of Peace Pioneers. And this lucky yet unlucky Morbius just so happened to be a member of the 3rd wave of Peace Pioneers. From the last communication of the Morbius pilot, who had attacked but never returned, everyone in the Earth Alliance fleet already knew that there was a ghost body on this battlefield that could not be captured by the radar and cameras. Is that so? Is that so? It's you, devil. The pilot pushed open the broken cockpit forcefully, then lowered his head and glanced at the radar that could not react to the Holy Accord Gouda at all. He then suddenly laughed a few times. Peace Pioneer 334, notice to all allies. Now I've discovered the true face of the devil in front of us. The coordinates have been transmitted to everyone's bodies. Remember. Observe the devil with your naked eyes. Remember. This communication was not on the encrypted channel of the Earth Alliance, but on the public channel that could be heard by the entire battlefield. As soon as these words rang out, everyone couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. Then, an even louder and more fanatical slogan sounded. For the blue and clean world. The broken Morbius suddenly changed direction amidst the loud slogan and rushed directly toward the Holy Accord Gouda. What? A collision? Such a strange action surprised Kira, but it allowed the Holy Accord Gouda to easily avoid it. However, the voice that resounded through the public channel was shouting fanatically. Devil who protects the adjusters! Have a taste of our revenge! The next second, a dazzling ball of light suddenly rose in the darkness and swallowed the Holy Accord Gouda. Kira, LH-033, who was lying on the hospital bed, opened her eyes and shouted Kira's name in panic. However, what greeted LH-033 was only the cold wall and the lines that connected her to the instrument with various sensor pad. Other than that, there was no one else. Kira, why did you come back here? Hearing the faint sound of artillery fire from afar, the girl with slightly grayish-white hair burst into tears. Bang! Bang! A sudden burst of gunfire woke LH-033 up from his crying. Gunshots? Has the Earth Alliance army landed? LH-033 gritted her teeth, raised her hand, and wiped the tears from the corner of her eyes. She struggled to get out of the hospital bed, and even struggled to tear off the sensor pads on her body. She stepped on the cold floor, leaned against the wall, and walked out of the ward amidst the sound of the instrument that was knocked to the ground by her actions. Kira. Kira. I have to go see Kira. The bright red gradually spread on the cold floor, dyeing the green Zaft military uniform red, and also drowning the faces that were struggling to carry out their orders. Pa! Pa! Heavy footsteps continued to sound. The red footsteps spread from one end of the corridor to the other end until they reached the door of Yakin Duway's command center. Was I too careless? The residual heat of the pistol had not dissipated, and the trace of smoke lingered under the mask, constantly reminding Kreutzer that it was far from the time to sleep. Schwa! The door opened. What entered his eyes was the huge screen. On the screen was the weapon interface that made Kreutzer's eyes light up. Genesis. The sound of the door opening. The sound of Kreutzer's footstep. It made Patrick, who was sitting on the chair, turn his head slightly. Kreutzer? I didn't expect you to come back like this. You're really making a fool of yourself. Patrick keenly sensed that Kreutzer was different, and that trace of aura that was different from usual made Patrick frown. No. President Sarah. That's not an opponent that mortals can deal with. Facing Patrick's reprimand, Kreutzer smiled without fear and casually explained. Not an opponent that mortals can deal with? Kreutzer, what are you talking about? This is not a reason to wash away your incompetence, Patrick said coldly as he lowered his right hand slightly and used the armrest of the chair to cover this small movement. Yes. This is not a reason to wash away my incompetence. So I'm here. Of course, Kreutzer noticed Patrick's actions. But he did not care. You're here? I don't know what kind of enemy you're talking about is like, someone that mortals can't deal with. But, no matter how strong the enemy is, they can't go against our Genesis. Gotcha! Just as Patrick finished speaking, the sound of a bullet being loaded could be heard. Bang! In the next second, the sound of a gunshot rang out and engulfed the entire command center, scaring everyone. When the smoke from the gun once again filled Kreutzer's nostrils, he picked up his gun, but before he could retaliate, the man in front of Mia slowly fell down. Kreutzer, you! Mia supported Patrick, who was slowly falling down, and shouted in a shrill voice, Don't worry! Quick! Retaliate! Kreutzer has betrayed the country! Bang! Bang! Another 2 gunshots rang out. But this was not the gunshots of the surrounding Zaft soldiers killing Kreutzer. Instead, it was the gunshots of Kreutzer taking the initiative to kill the Zaft soldiers who had just raised their guns. At this moment, there was no one else on the platform where the commander's seat was, and the people below had just reacted to what had happened and were in a mess. Kreutzer, you. In Mia's arms, Patrick used all his strength but was still unable to lift a finger. What about me? Speaker Sarah. Your movements are too slow. I originally thought that your movements would be sharper. Kreutzer glanced at the redness on Patrick's chest that was gradually expanding and smiled faintly. You! As if seeing through the true meaning behind Kreutzer's smile, Patrick suddenly struggled a few times but was still unable to exert any strength. On the contrary, the harder he struggled, the faster his life faded from Patrick's body. Speaker Sarah. I suggest that you stop struggling. Perhaps you can still meet Aslan for the last time. As he said this, Kreutzer looked at Mia with a meaningful gaze. Kreutzer, do you think that you have mastered Genesis? Mia, who was comforting Patrick and preparing to secretly use the recovery medicine, said coldly. Kreutzer laughed and strode past Patrick and Mia to the front of the control panel, not caring if he would be attacked from behind by Mia. Master Genesis? Don't look down on me. From the moment Genesis was born, it belonged to me. After Kreutzer's right hand quickly entered a set of commands on the keyboard, a password card popped out from the card slot beside him. After that, he even showed this password card to Mia and Patrick. Speaker Sarah. I'm sorry. I can only walk down the road from now on. But, Kreutzer, you want to destroy this world. As Mia secretly injected the recovery potion into Patrick's body, he gradually recovered some of his strength. Seeing through Kreutzer's intentions, he shouted at the soldiers who rushed up the platform. Quick! Kill Kreutzer quickly! Ka! Ka! In the sound of footsteps, muzzles were raised and a barrage of bullets was fired at Kreutzer. But Kreutzer, who had already expected this, jumped down from the platform a second ago. When the soldiers rushed up, Kreutzer had already blended into the crowd and waved the password card in his hand at them. Speaker Sarah. What a pity! You, who should have destroyed the world with your own hands, was bewitched by a woman. This is really ironic. Quickly chase after him. Kreutzer took away Genesis's password card. If he runs into Genesis, this world will be destroyed by him. Mia did not care about Kreutzer's ridicule and decisively gave the order. Hurry! Follow Lux's orders. We must stop Kreutzer. After Kreutzer left, Patrick, who had just recovered some strength, fell into Mia's arms powerlessly once again. It was only after the soldiers had chased after Kreutzer and left that Patrick and Mia were the only ones left on the platform that Patrick slowly turned his head to look at Mia. Kreutzer, you're right. After Reynoa was killed by the Earth's joint nuclear bomb, I once. Father, don't speak. You will be fine. A hint of panic flashed across Mia's eyes. For some reason, the moment the recovery medicine was injected into Patrick's body, the redness on his chest stopped spreading. But after Kreutzer escaped, it once again spread rapidly. The effect of the recovery medicine was actually zero? No. Look. Kreutzer, that fellow, always has a backup plan. If I continue to live, it will not be a good thing for him, or even for Aslan. Perhaps because he knew that his death was near, Patrick's cold expression softened a little after his wife's death. Father, hang in there. As long as Alice comes back, you will definitely be fine. The recovery medicine in Mia's hands had already been used up. Her only hope could only be placed on Alice. Alice, is it? I didn't expect Aslan's useless son to be so lucky. Unknowingly, Patrick's face became rosy and his speech became smoother. This caused Mia to panic. Lux, don't panic. Perhaps, after Reynoa left, I had left together with her. This is just my fate of being late. Patrick tried to raise his hand, but he was unable to do so. Look, I have no strength left. Lux, can you fulfill my last wish? Father, please say it. Tears flowed down Mia's cheeks as she helplessly watched Patrick's life slowly come to an end. Don't cry. If I see Reynoa there and she asks me what Aslan's wife is like, I really don't know how to answer her. This helpless and bitter laugh stunned Mia. She wiped her tears and quickly muttered something that Patrick couldn't understand or hear clearly. A glimmer of light attracted Patrick's gradually dissipating attention. It was a girl's face that looked exceptionally bright under her soft black hair. For some reason, the moment Patrick saw this face, he actually saw the young girl he had met when he was young. Alike, so alike. Reynoa. As he mumbled, Patrick's eyes widened slightly and his hands slowly reached out towards that face. My name is Mia Campbell. President Sarah. Mia saw Patrick's reaction, but she couldn't bring herself to address him as Patrick with Lakis's appearance. Mia, is it Mia? Good name. In this case, I can also answer to Reynoa. Mia. From now on, Aslan. Aslan is in your hands. All of a sudden, Patrick grabbed Mia's right hand with both of his hands. Just now, Patrick, who seemed like he was about to die peacefully, had his eyes wide open, as if he had seen something terrifying. He used his last breath to shout out loud. Aslan, you don't become like me. Chapter 654. Bzzz bzzz. The sound of electric currents dragged the lost soul that had fallen into the darkness back to reality. Kira, who woke up from the chaos and darkness without knowing the time, was faced with a mess. The cracked screen. Broken or disconnected wires were scattered in all directions, making the operating table look particularly broken. There was also the glass mask in front of him that had a crack across it. Amidst the dizziness that had yet to fade, a fragmented memory quietly emerged. The broken but fearless Morbius that was charging toward the Holy Accord Gouda, as well as the terrifying impact that was accompanied by a loud and crazy slogan. For the blue and clean world. The moment this slogan appeared in Kira's mind again, all the fragmented memories instantly formed a terrifying picture. It was Morbius. It was those Morbius that were charging toward the Holy Accord Gouda. Even if Kira's piloting skills were good enough, and the performance of the Holy Accord Gundam was excellent enough, in the face of those fearless Morbius, who would decisively self-destruct the moment the Gundam avoided their charge, they were so powerless. Even if nuclear bombs were placed in a vacuum, they would only be oversized bombs. However, the moment the number of self-destructs reached a qualitative change, the Holy Accord Gouda would inevitably be affected, and it might even be difficult for him to escape. Fortunately, at the critical moment, Kira finally erupted. Now that the trajectory of history had changed, Kira finally ushered in the Day of Awakening. However, this Day of Awakening came so late that if there was the slightest mistake, Kira would be dragged into the abyss of eternal damnation by this terrifying tide of self-destruction. Even so, Kira, who gave it his all, could only pilot the Holy Accord Gouda and escape by a fluke. Quantum Computer Virus Distribution System offline. Unable to connect to virus distribution equipment. Low power output of power furnace. Unable to last more than 3 minutes in battle. All weapons systems are offline. Enduring the wave-like headache, Kira quickly checked the Holy Accord Gouda's data and system. The result was not optimistic. Kira and Holy Accord Gouda, who had luckily escaped, could no longer stay on this battlefield. Once those crazy Earthlings discovered that Gouda was still alive, they would probably face an even more terrifying situation than before. However, if he left just like that, the crisis that Plant was facing would not be resolved. However, Kira was powerless to do so now. Looking at the Morbius charging madly amidst the artillery fire of Zaft MS, Kira recalled the sickly face under the gray hair. I want to go back and see her. For some reason, this thought immediately occupied Kira's mind as soon as it appeared, quickly dispelling his worries about Plant being destroyed by nuclear weapons. Driven by this thought, Holy Accord Gouda, who was lucky enough to survive the self-destruction of many Morbius, left the battlefield without anyone noticing and flew toward Yakindue. Holy Accord Gouda's departure did not become an opportunity for change in this battlefield that defended Plant's safety. It also did not make this battlefield worse. From the beginning, the worst situation was caused by the sudden departure of the photographic figurine troops. After a bitter battle and pursuit, the Zaft MS troops led by Nigger, Isaac, and Diego finally stabilized the defense line. However, as long as 1 or 2 peace pioneers broke through this newly stabilized defense line, it would usher in a terrifying outcome. April City, or other cities in Plant, they would definitely be hit by the nuclear weapons fired by the peace pioneers, reproducing the terrible disaster of Bloody Valentine's Day. What a hindrance! Croth, am I right? The 3 cockroaches followed behind the rest of the peace pioneers. Their gazes were focused on the pitch-black Gundam, the dual Gundam, and the Storm Gundam that were blocking their advance. Hearing Xiaoни's question, Croth only responded to his partner's question with a vague sentence. No, not even a sentence, just a simple syllable. The vague words not only made Xia and I feel uncomfortable, but also made Olga reveal a look of pity. Although the three roaches often fought among themselves, they actually cared about each other. Among the many orphans collected by the Blue Persian Chrysanthemum, only the three of them could become the same batch of MS Pilot. The rest were either judged to be defective and dealt with, or could not withstand the test and died on the spot. Croth, let's go. Olga gritted his teeth. No matter how many words he had in his heart, it only turned into this sentence in the end. In the sudden light of the fire in the propulsion backpack, the three roaches drove their bodies past the Peace Pioneers' troops and attacked the Dark Assault. Isaac, Earth United's new model is here. As soon as the three roaches appeared, Nigger immediately noticed their existence. Good. Coming. Without saying a word, the three of them tacitly launched a 3-on-3 battle. At the same time, on the edge of the battlefield that was getting more and more intense, the 8th Fleet, under the crazy and reckless rush, finally arrived at the edge of the battlefield after paying the price of overloading the power furnace of many battleships and causing them to be paralyzed and even explode on the spot. As soon as they approached the battlefield, the 8th Fleet received the fierce battle situation from the center of the battlefield. This is really a big scene. Sitting in the command seat, Halberton's face was solemn. It was not difficult to see the direction of the battlefield. What was difficult was how to make the right decision. Ms. Jormungand, what's your master's plan? After pondering for a moment, Halberton looked at Jormungand. Of course it's to destroy Genesis as soon as possible. We don't care about the outcome of the battle between Earth United and Zaf. What we care about is to prevent Earth from being destroyed by Genesis. Jormungand naturally knew about the actions of the three-ship alliance, but it did not mean that she would say it out loud. Genesis? It's really a difficult decision to make. Halberton's goal from the start was to prioritize the Genesis era. However, after arriving at the battlefield, Halberton found that there was only one choice in front of him. No matter which one he chose, Halberton was bound to face another terrible situation. Haha. I didn't expect Ms. Jormungand to be someone who likes to come up with puzzles. But this is not a difficult choice. Halberton pondered for a moment and understood Jormungand's intention. From the moment he saw Jormungand, he found that Jormungand seemed to have a strong sense of trust and even a faint sense of worship in some aspect. Therefore, Halberton, who should have remained calm, made the most risky choice in his life. In the midst of Jormungand's smile, Halberton raised his right hand and ordered loudly. All battleships, prepare for first-level combat. Target Peace Pioneer Force. Our 8th Fleet will participate in the battle to surround Plant. This does not mean that we have given up our hostile stance against Plant, but to prevent this war from falling into a more terrible abyss, and to prevent our home planet from being destroyed. After a pause, the scene of the last batch of peace pioneers launching nuclear weapons appeared in front of Halberton's eyes. All battleships. Fire. Target. Nuclear bombs. In an instant, the 8th Fleet burst out with the first roar of joining the war. The salvo of artillery fire instantly interweaved into an airtight interception net in front of Plant, shooting down the nuclear weapons one by one. The scene of Gauda blocking all the nuclear bombs launched by the Peace Pioneer Force with his own power reappeared. But this time, it was done by the 8th Fleet. The sudden artillery fire. The sudden arrival of the fleet. The heat of the battlefield suddenly cooled down by 30%. Whether it was the Earth Alliance side or Zaf side, they were all stunned by the sudden entry of the 8th Fleet into the battle. I'm Duan Halberton. Now notify the remnants of the Earth Alliance fleet that our enemy is not Plant, but Patrick Serra, who created the Genesis, and destroy the Genesis as quickly as possible. Continuing to attack Plant is just a waste of our precious time, and we don't have much time left. When the broadcast from Hal Barton resounded throughout the battlefield, the frenzied momentum of the remnants of the Earth Alliance fleet suddenly withered. On. Hal Barton? Didn't this guy die together with Ptolemy when he was hit by the Genesis? Lars Mutayazi, who was clamoring to teach the regulator a lesson, saw Hal Barton appear on the screen and immediately jumped. The next moment, Lars Mutayazi seemed to feel something and suddenly turned his head to look at Bucky Lulu, who was sitting in the captain's seat. The female captain, who was pointed at by him just now and had no choice but to submit, was looking at him sharply, her eyes full of mockery. "You, Nader? What are you looking at? Quickly carry out your mission." Lars Mutayazi, whose face gradually began to distort, reached into his arms and was about to repeat the previous scene of threatening Bucky Lulu with a gun, but he was suddenly pressed against the wall by two quick-witted soldiers. You, rebel!" Lars Mutayazi, who still wanted to struggle, was caught by the third soldier. With a forceful pull, the pistol was taken away on the spot. "Ah, Nader? Hal Barton? You're crazy. You'll be the sinners of humanity. Let me go. Let me go." Lars Mutayazi, who was frantically struggling, kept shouting, but he did not get a response from Bucky Lulu. "Take him down. Watch over him." After giving the order indifferently, Bucky Lulu raised her hand and pressed down on her hat to calm her frantically beating heart. She did not expect that the change she was waiting for would come so quickly. It was so fast that she almost could not react. "Contact Admiral Hal Barton. Archangel, request to join the 8th Fleet in the battle against Genesis. In addition, inform the remaining warships of the Moon Fleet whether to follow Admiral Halberton's footsteps or stay here to fend for themselves. Everything is up to them." "Yes." In the blink of an eye, Bucky Lulu and Archangel launched an unexpected counterattack with Halberton's astonishing appearance and took back the command from the crazy Lars Mutayazi. On the side of Archangel, Halberton's appearance also surprised everyone on Archangel. "Admiral, are you still alive?" Margot was stunned. "Captain. Received a communication request from the 8th Fleet." Mirielia's voice came at the right time. "Quick, connect." As soon as Margot's voice fell, Halberton's image appeared on the screen. "Long time no see. Lamias. Now is not the time to catch up. I have learned about your experience from Ms. Jormungand. So, let us focus all our energy on the mission of destroying Genesis." Looking at the dignified Hal Barton, Margot opened her mouth and finally responded with a serious salute. "Yes, Admiral." The situation changed. As soon as Hal Barton and the 8th Fleet appeared, the pressure on Zaph's side suddenly decreased. The Earth Alliance, which was originally launching a crazy attack without fear of death, split into two waves. One wave fought and retreated, bypassing the battlefield and going straight to the 8th Fleet of Genesis. The other wave maintained their crazy attack, ignoring the existence of the 8th Fleet. What exactly is going on? In the duel that forced Gouda to retreat, Gouda looked at the Earth Alliance that was torn into two pieces from afar. Why, Zack was in disbelief. "This is an opportunity. Why, Zack? As long as we kill the enemy in front of us, this war will be over." Nigger more or less knew about Raiminkai's plan, so when he saw the Earth Alliance's Moon Fleet split due to the appearance of Hal Barton, he was relieved. Although the situation was grim, it was not as dangerous as before. The strong intervention of the 8th Fleet triggered a sharp change in the battlefield, which also affected Yakin Due's side. Amidst the gunshots, Kreutzer nimbly passed through the aisles and quickly rushed into Naku where his Oracle Gouda was parked. The moment he left the aisle, Kreutzer turned around and threw two grenades into the aisle. Under the microgravity, the grenades rolled into the darkness of the aisle under Kreutzer's gaze, and then set off a violent explosion, accompanied by screams that symbolized death. "Sorry. I don't have time to play with you now. Kreutzer reached back and stopped his body steadily next to the Oracle Gao Da's cockpit. After glancing at the smoke-filled aisle, he threw himself into the cockpit. I didn't expect that knight to have such a trick up his sleeve. Hal Barton, who was supposed to be dead, was actually rescued by him. Then, I don't have much time left. In front of the screen that gradually lit up, the password card of Genesis quietly floated across Kreutzer's sight. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.